Hey everybody, it's JJ and we're back again for another PC DIY live stream. It's actually been a bit, so thank you guys for joining us here on today's stream. We've got a lot to be able to go ahead and talk about, so I want to go ahead and thank everybody for joining us today. My name's JJ, if you guys are not aware. I'm going to be giving you guys a little bit essentially of a recap of what we did for Computex 2025 with some really amazing series of updates. I mean, we've got a little bit of everything from brand new monitors to motherboards, graphics cards, networking products, coolers, gaming gear, peripherals. I think just about almost every single product category we're probably going to be able to touch on a little bit of it and be able to give you guys also some cool teasers at some stuff that was kind of shown off at Computex, but maybe not even fully announced. So giving you guys even a little bit more insight into terms of the really cool things that we're going to be doing in terms of that. Let's see who we have joining us actually today on the stream. As always, guys, you can let me know that everything's coming through okay in terms of the audio. If levels are good, let us know if that's okay, and we'll definitely go ahead and get ready to jump into things. All right. So first and foremost, let's see who we have. We've got Michael joining us, man. Fantastic. Thank you for joining us here on the stream today. Sue Min, as always, a great actually member of our PC DIY community. Fantastic to go ahead and have you here as well. Erica, fantastic. Thanks for joining us here on the stream today. And we've got Dan Evils. Interesting. So he goes, please tell me also which the PG32 UCBR dual mode monitor, please. I've got an update in terms of actually some really cool ROG monitors that we're going to be talking about, including an update to actually our PG32 UCDM, which I think a lot of you guys are going to be excited about. But just make sure to stay tuned. We're going to be talking about a lot of different monitors, including, like I said, some monitors that we didn't even actually show off at Computex. So a lot to actually go ahead and touch on. All right, let's get ready to go ahead and jump into it, guys. As always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop them into the comments. We'll do our best to go ahead and follow up on those we can here in the stream. If not, make sure to go ahead and actually also check out the link to our PC DIY community. So PC DIY community recently relaunched on the Heartbeat platform. It's a fantastic space. You can go ahead and download the app. It's focused at only just being about core PC DIY hardware and all of the ASUS product lines that we have to offer. So it's a great space if you want to find out about the latest and greatest, be able to see amazing builds, be able to ask questions, be able to be in the loop in terms of kind of, like I said, not only upcoming product announcements, but giveaway opportunities and a whole lot more that we have planned for a community. So you can actually find the link to the PC DIY community in the description if you're checking us out on YouTube, or you can go ahead and use the course search in your favorite search engine and be able to look for the ASUS Heartbeat community group. So with that, let's go ahead and give one more set of hellos here. We've got Lone Wolf, man. Fantastic, man. Happy to have you, man. And thanks for being a supporter for so many years, man. Hopefully your builds are working well for you and you're doing good. And Zach, happy to have you here also on the stream. So happy Friday for everybody. Let's get ready to go ahead and jump into it. So I think first and foremost, what I want to go ahead and touch on is a little bit in terms of prototypes and concepts. So one of the really cool things that we do at a show like Computex is to try to provide some perspective in terms of where we think things are going to be maybe going. Sometimes those are going to be in terms of designs and features that we're looking to hopefully implement into our product. And we're kind of starting to test the waters and see what feedback from you guys might be in terms of what do you think about this. A great example of this is many of you have now seen what we've been doing in terms of the BTF ecosystem, that's our quote unquote back to the future based designs, where you see motherboards that now have the connectors on the rear side of the motherboard, as well as things like our BTF based graphics cards, which allow for really streamlined and more simple and efficient based builds. But at this Computex, we actually showed off something that we're aligning in with the BTF ecosystem. It can also be something else entirely different. Many of you know, when you go about building a system, kind of one of the pain points that you might have is dealing with cables, right? Cables are always kind of one of these things where it's like, it's great, especially if you're not using something proprietary, that you can go ahead and get things connected. You'll be able to go ahead and manage things, whether it's from the UEFI BIOS or from within the software. But, sometimes just dealing with the entirety of all of that can be, just a little bit more problematic or a little bit more challenging. So I want to actually show you a cool concept that we showed off here in terms of a next generation potential hardware design that we have here. And credit here over to one of our members of the PC DIY community with Justin Shu, who went ahead and actually captured a couple of these photos for me so I can go ahead and show this to you guys, because I want to be able to show this to you this week. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So if we take a look at this system that's kind of set up, you'll see a pretty clean kind of setup and configuration. If you imagine this, let's say, inside of a chassis, normally right here to the right-hand side, you would see, of course, all of those fans, right? And normally to be able to control all the fans and be able to do everything, you would have to have corresponding leads coming from those fans and then connected to the motherboard, right? Well, in this demo, we're actually showing you a next generation based concept design here with an ROG fan controller. So let me go ahead and go over to our next shot here. And you can actually see right here, what we're doing is actually using a wireless transmission standler to be able to actually do all of the control management. So the really cool thing is here, you can see that these are utilizing our daisy chain magnetic fan based design. So of course that would go into the controller, and then you would have maybe one simple connection that would actually go to the controller. And from there, you could actually go ahead and manage everything wirelessly. So you would essentially eliminate the need to have any type of cables directly connected to the motherboard, allowing for a much greater degree of flexibility in terms of how you approach cable management and overall layout configurations. So you can see how this also aligns in with kind of the design concept that we have for, let's say, BTF-based ecosystems. BTF-based ecosystems are already offering you really, really kind of clean and stylized based builds. So if we go over to, let's say, just, you know, a look and feel for a kind of a BTS-based setup. Give me a second here and see if I can bring one up here. So this would be an example of kind of like a BTF-based build here that we can see. This would allow you to kind of take this even to a further degree, right? So if we take a look here, this is actually, you know, our Hyperion BTF-based, not a Hyperion-based BTF-based system, but you can see here, like with our more BTF-optimized cooler, you know, the cable connections you would normally have that would be running to all these headers right here, they would essentially be all eliminated. So like what you see when of the BTF, but the big difference is that even on the rear side, when you would be managing those cables, you would even be looking for more kind of a simplified configuration experience. So I don't know, what do you guys think? Is this something that you think that we should be continuing to look to be able to develop on in terms of kind of a concept or next generation design? We are already working even on the next generation of BTF, what we call internally BTF 3.0. We're going to talk a little bit about BTF 2.5 and what you're going to be seeing in the new generation of graphics cards, which are going to be launching very shortly, which utilize a revised connector. But there have already been some kind of, I'd say, discussion that we've gone ahead and kind of put forth out there, where we've talked about examples of such of unifying, let's say, connectors, such as the EPS connector, the 24-pin connector, as well as the 12x6 power connector, which we'd be using for graphics cards, and a singular edge connector interface, right? So instead of actually having 3 different cables that you would be connecting to the motherboard, imagine having one singularized edge interface connector, right? So then streamlining that experience even further. So you can start to see we're really looking to continue to evolve what the options might be for you when it goes about the kind of PC DIY experience, ultimately to make it faster, easier, and simpler for you. So I think it's pretty exciting. This is pretty cool. But let's see what maybe some opinion here is from the community. Do they have any thoughts on it? Let's go ahead and see here. So Michael goes in here and shares that he really loves BTF, so that's fantastic to see. We've also got Daniel Eva says, BTF rocks. I wish there was a whole ecosystem around it already, including an ROG 5090 Astral LC. So the LC would be, I think, a little bit complicated to try to do something within BTF, but we are already going to be doing an actual ROG Astral in BTF, and you will be able to have a BTF ecosystem. I mean, the great thing is what we've done is we have right now everything from BTF motherboard to a BTF graphics card, BTF supportive chassis. One thing I do want to note, and I'll talk about this when I get to the motherboard side in a little bit, is that it's important to keep in mind for BTF, you do have what's called BTF standard and BTF advanced. One of the really great things with BTF is that you can have a BTF motherboard, but you can do the standard configuration and use any graphics card, whether it's an ASUS graphics cards or it's even competitor solutions. That allows you to still get a streamlined, really nice looking build. But the main thing you're going to see that's going to be a difference is you're going to have that visible power connector for the graphics card if you use a standard graphics card. So keep in mind that if you go with a BTF motherboard, you don't have to use a BTF-based graphic card. But if you go with a BTF advanced configuration, there is going to be a benefit. When you go with the BTF advanced configuration, that is when you will essentially be able to leverage kind of like the most kind of clean and simplified look, right? If you want to kind of note it like that. Because, of course, the motherboard on the BTF side, if you're going to be utilizing this connector, which is what we call the GCHPWR connector, that's going to essentially provide power directly to the graphics card, and then you don't have to have any visible cable. You still have to connect the cable on the rear of the motherboard, but it's going to be a very streamlined, kind of simple experience. So pretty cool. It sounds like overall the feedback is definitely for us to see something like that. We got wireless fan controls are always great, pretty cool. So overall, let's see ultimately what happens here. I think it'll be pretty cool for us to be able to implement something like this. So just continue to watch us and see what happens in that space. All right. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. For the RG Ally, on this PC DIY stream, we actually focus on what we call our OPBG line of components. So essentially all of our component ecosystem of products, essentially individualized items. For any of our system-related products, I'd recommend checking out the ROG Pulse channel that we have. And they do a great job over there to cover things like our laptops, our gaming handhelds, phone, and other system-related products. That would include the ROG Ally. So no information that I'm going to be giving you on anything on the system-related side of the fence. Everything here, we're going to be focusing on our component sides of products. Okay. All right. me go ahead and keep moving this in here. So Chris says, are we ever going to get a white X870E board with a 7-segment debug display? I mean, we've already started to even offer more white boards. I mean, we're making more white products than we ever have. And I think actually by probably, if you look at the product density that we have, there's probably no component manufacturer that is actually making the sheer number of white that we're doing, because we offer white components in literally every single product line that we have. That's a testament in terms of our actually ability to be able to commit that much resource, which it's not actually easy just scaling out to have that many variants in terms of products, especially when you're talking about complex products. It's one thing to do it when you're doing something as simple as, let's say, like a fan, which is pretty simple, although definitely fans can be complex depending on the composition of the material that you're using in the fan and whatnot. But it can be quite a bit more complicated as you scale out to do it across significantly more challenging types of different components, right? But in terms of the segment display, the reality is that it doesn't have a lot of value once you put it inside of a chassis. You know, from our perspective, you know, we pioneered actually implementing not only advanced diagnostics on motherboards with things like ROG Connect, which gave the ability to actually have full debug readout in text format as opposed to just a numerical based format. So you could actually connect like a USB cable to the motherboard, and then you can have like a laptop connected and you could see the full readout. And what we really saw is over time is that users sometimes they say they would use these features, but they weren't really actually consistently really being utilized. And what we found is also they're not really always a clear indicator to help you to debug a problem. And sometimes they can actually take you in an entirely different direction. Good examples, let's say you just randomly get a debug display that gives you a 55 error code. You might think, oh, this is fantastic. It's going to help me supposedly. But in reality, when you go and let's say look it up in the manual, which that in itself is a problem, or maybe you go to the internet and the internet incorrectly informs you what supposedly the answer is to that error code. You, let's say 55 means a memory error code, but you don't really understand that the issue isn't actually really the memory. Maybe you enabled, let's say, an XMP or an Expo profile, and you had a very aggressive memory divider, and the CPU and the IMC is a limitation. Or maybe you did something that a lot of users do, which is actually double stack 2 sticks of memory in a 4-DIMM configuration, two slots per channel, 2 DIMMs per channel. And again, you're being told that it's the DRAM, but in reality, it's actually really the configuration and the memory controller that's at fault. What we've done, I think, to help to make more users have essentially more debug options available to them is we invented QLED, which is the 4 LED system. That is now present on more motherboards than it's ever been. So we're at an era in motherboards where pretty much every motherboard to produce has at least a 4 LED lighting system to give you a debug pathway. And I'd say in 70% of situations, that LED, if it were to go off, let's say for the DRAM, as opposed to giving you a specific DRAM number indicator, it's literally going to do the same exact debug routine as far as what you would want to be doing in terms of those debug steps. I think the debug display we find is only really advantageous to specific users in very specific scenarios, which tend to usually be kind of more advanced kind of performance tuning targets, or just kind of super enthusiasts. So that's the reason why you generally see it reserved for models like our Dash E models or higher end ROG based models, but not ROG Strix models. So again, though, on the Dash E, we have already incorporated it. We also have, and I don't want to take too much time on this, but I want to answer kind of questions and give some insight. We also kind of pick and choose what we think has more value. I think one great example of this is if you look at our current models like the Dash A. The Dash A is our most entry ROG model. Over the last couple of generations, we've done things like we didn't used to have clear CMOS all the way down to the Dash A. Now every model in the ROG Strix lineup has a clear CMOS button. I'd much rather have clear CMOS because it's far more advantageous to the broad set of users than something like the debug LED display, because the clear CMOS, there's no easy way to resolve not having a clear CMOS. Essentially, you would either have to remove the battery or maybe short the clear CMOS jumper pins right on the motherboard. And it can be definitely quite a bit more useful in a number of different situations than the limited value set that you might have from that. We're also looking at another new design implementation, which is pretty cool. It's only been done on a couple of motherboards, but we call it QLED Core, which actually takes a cable and you would connect the cable to your chassis. It uses the actual power LED. So instead of the power LED turning on, right, and letting you know that the chassis power is on, you can use that actually for a debug LED indicator for the motherboard. So you would actually get the LED to sequence based on the issue that you're actually having. So we think that that's another kind of alternative, hey, to maybe give users more debug information. But I appreciate your feedback. Make sure to drop stuff like that in the PC DIY group. We literally look at that information every single generation and try to balance out the spec, feature, and function that we're doing per each board. So hopefully that gives some insight into that. Okay. All right. let's keep going to there. So we talked a bit about the wireless fan controller. So again, I'm just going to bring up a quick image again of that guy. And again, this is entirely a prototype in terms of concept. So it's not final. About the only thing that's really final here is, of course, the daisy chain magnetic fans that we have here. And I will give you guys a little bit of an Easter egg. I can confirm for you that hopefully this year, I think probably by late Q3, you should be seeing the ROG STRIX individual daisy chain magnetic based fans that we're going to be coming with to the market. So for those of you that have been wanting to see an ROG discrete set of daisy chain fans that are not included with things like our AI coolers, we will get you covered. They will be coming. So just make sure to keep it tuned to the PC DIY channel here, or make sure to check out our community for more updates as those come to the market. All right. So let's go ahead and keep moving things along. So I think on the motherboard side, let's go ahead and quickly touch here. I think on the Crosshair X670E. This is going to be the BTF model. So let me go ahead and bring this one up here. Give me 1 second. And this is pretty much just going to be pretty similar to what we already were doing with the current generation Crosshair. The main differential, of course, is going to be that it is going to be a BTF-based motherboard. So let me go ahead and bring this up. And this is also going to supplement the B850 base model that we kind of previously announced, but we also did go ahead and show off at Computex. So let me go ahead and bring this one up here. Oh, where'd my image go here, guys? Apologies. I had an image up here for this one. So I'm actually just going to go to our group. For some reason, I lost that image. So let me go ahead and head over to our group, and we're going to bring up the post straight from there. So give me 1 second here. Scroll over here, and we'll find it in a moment. Too many product announcements that we had. All right, here we go. It goes. So this works right here. All right, so you can see we've got two now AMD-based BTF offerings, and again, these will both support standard and advanced configurations. And so again, what we mean by standard configuration, standard just means that you can run the BTF-based motherboard. You do need a BTF supporting chassis, so such as like our GT302 chassis or A31 chassis. Those are both support BTF. We also, of course, have the Hyperion BTF. So there's 3 different chassis in the ASUS lineup. We do have, though, the BTF Alliance, which means that we have worked with pretty much, I think, at this point, almost every chassis partner has produced at least one BTF compatible chassis. So that is going to be a requirement. But then you can use any standard-based graphics card design. In terms of all the core features and functions, I'm not going to recap all of the great features and functions that we have. If you really want to learn about all the really cool stuff that we've done on that side, I'd recommend checking out the more in-depth posts and write-up that we have. Or you can go ahead and also check out our prior X870 live stream or overview that we did on the X870 models, because pretty much from all the features and functions, they're going to be identical. It's just the main update is that there's going to be a BTF-based model. And then you can also see that we have the B850 BTF Wi-Fi, which is going to be in white. So if you want to go with a bold and bright based aesthetic, then go with the TUF Gaming based model. If you want to go with that classic kind of black aesthetic, right, that's really clean and refined, then you can go with the ROG and you can go with the Hero. So those are going to be our 2 BTF based options. And again, they both support standard or advanced configurations. One thing I'll also note that some people aren't aware of, we were the first to market to fully implement across all of our UEFIs that now on B850 as well as on X870, you do have CU DIMM support. So if you even want to be able to run higher frequency based memory kits, then you can actually go ahead and do that. So you can actually run some pretty impressive actually DRAM configurations now with CU DIMMs on the AMD based platform. So whether you want to be able to run higher frequency in terms of a 2 DIMM configuration, or you also want to run higher density configurations in a 4 DIMM configuration, those are definitely also going to be possible with CU DIMM as well. So those DIMMs are now just starting to come to market, but we have gone ahead and already issued that UEFI BIOS, which introduces the support for CU DIMM based memory on these platforms. Okay. So that is going to cover you there in terms of that. Let me go ahead and quickly just see if there's any questions that we have on the BTF side in terms of the motherboards before we continue on that side. So give me 1 second here. Maxi asks, is the TUF Gaming BTF Wi-Fi black? No. So as you saw, it is a white-based variant right now. We don't have a plan to have a TUF Gaming BTF white variant. So right now, essentially, we have those 2 options. So if you want black, you would go with the Crosshair. And if you want white, you would go with the TUF Gaming based option. Okay. Any other ones that I see right there? Pascos goes, any new ROG case soon? Yes, I'm actually going to be talking about the new updated Helios, and maybe I'll give you a little bit of a teaser about the new upcoming ROG chassis, which will actually be kind of a brother to the Hyperion, which for those of you who are looking for a panoramic-based display, this is definitely one you're going to be interested in. But we'll see how much I talk about it, even though I just gave you a little bit of a teaser right there. All right. So CU dim mode, it's runs actively now. Whether you want to run CU dim in a one-to-one based configuration or you want to run it in a non-one-to-one configuration, that's entirely up to you. But of course, really the benefit of those higher frequency-based configurations is generally running in an unlinked configuration. And it has already been shown that if you can, of course, scale the DRAM frequency high enough, right, you can actually resolve sometimes of that kind of focused optimization mindset that you should only use 6000 MT, right? The reality is that 6000 MT is a very good overall kind of performance standard for many users, but it's not the end all be all for performance. Especially as you go to more cores, you can actually benefit from more bandwidth. And also these higher frequency kits just start to offer not only an extraordinary high level of bandwidth, but they also tend to be higher screen based bin memory kits. So they have generally more variability and in their tuning targets, right? So they might allow for kind of more optimization when it comes to dialing in certain types of subtiming tunings, right? That could also aid in kind of performance. And this can really vary on your workflow or the games that you're working with. I think from our perspective, our main goal is really just looking to give you more flexibility at how you want to perform your performance tuning, right? So we're just giving you the most choice, right? You can go with your standard DDR5-based memory, or if you even want more performance, then you can also now option into CUDM-based memories, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and continue on from there, and we'll keep rolling it around. So one other update that we have right here is going to be an actual workstation series. I won't spend too much time to talk about this one, but I do want to just touch on it just because it is a new updated model that we're going to have within our lineup. So for those that are going to be more on the workstation side of the fence, we do actually have a TRX based motherboard update, and that's going to be with the TRX 50 Sage Wi-Fi A. So let me go ahead and bring this board up. It's a great looking board. I really love the aesthetic of our WS series. So this is going to be an update that we announced right here. You can see, of course, this is going to be really for those of you that are in the more professional segmentation of the market. So not for really gaming, of course, you know, one of these platforms, you could use it for gaming, hybrid-based use. But really, when you're talking about the TRFA-based platform, this is for people that are doing advanced productivity, science and simulation workflows, advanced rendering, large composition editing, right? You know, science and simulation, you know, AI workflows, things along those lines, especially because you have so much more memory density, you have higher PCI lane configurations and things along those lines. So you can see, of course, here you've got a lot of course, PCI support compared to a traditional base motherboard. Most standard motherboards don't even have a dual by 8 base configuration, although you do see that on models like our ProArt series, where we run a dual by 8 so that you can run 2 graphics cards if you're working in a more kind of prosumer professional type of segmentation. Here you can see you can even go to higher base configurations, and you've got a lot of flexibility on that side. The board also is going to support things like 40 gigabits connectivity, 10 gigabit based Ethernet, has multiple, of course, high-speed PCIe NVMe slots on the motherboard, and it also even has a slim SAS connector. The cool thing with the slim SAS connector, if you're not aware, and this is something that we actually also did on the Crosshair-based model, which I really love, is that if you want to be able to use high-speed U.2 or U.3 based SSDs as opposed to an M.2 SSD, there's a couple of big advantages that you have with a U.2 or U.3 is that they're not going to be generally thermally constrained or power constrained. Right now, if you look at like a normal M.2 SSD, a lot of people love them. It's a nice technology, but to be honest, it's not really the best technology when you talk about maximizing what you want to do with storage. The main reason why is because it is limited, and it's limited because it was originally designed for a small form factor environment like a laptop. So you don't have a lot of Z height clearance, you have a power limitation issue, and you also have a thermal limitation issue, which you can actually see with really high performance like PCI Gen 4, Gen 5 drives, where you're talking about 10, 11, 12, even sometimes up to 15 watts of thermal dissipation that you have to do in a surface area that's really small. So the benefit when you go to something like U.2 or U.3 is you pretty much eliminate the power, the heat, and the density that you can stack memory. So right now, the biggest pretty much M.2 that you can get is going to be 8 gigs. And there's not really even that many 8 gigs that are on the market. U.2 and U.3, the latest update now that's available is you can get 120 terabyte U.2 or U.3 based SSD, and you can commonly actually get much bigger capacity. So if you want to routinely get 12 or 16 gigabyte, 30 gigabyte options, you can get them. They are expensive, but if you also don't want to be splitting so many different lanes or kind of stacking different drives across different slots or all that, like in one of my personal systems, that's what I use. I use a U.2 20 terabyte plus drive, right, as a single base volume, and that's what I use for my PCIe based storage, right? So yeah, that's one of the cool things that you can do with, of course, the SIMSAS connector. Although technically you can do that with the slot, right? You could just get actually a U.2 adapter card, and then you could slot in the U.2 or the U.3 drive. And again, there's still no cables that you have to use, so you can still have a really clean and stylized base design. But a really cool option there for those that are going to be looking in the professional segmentation. So that is going to be the TRX Space 50. All right, let's quickly see any quick questions on that side. If not, we'll keep kind of going alongside there. Hey, H2 Computers, man, happy to have you here, right? Yeah, bring your wallet for 120 terabyte. Yes, it's going to be expensive, but I think the great thing is, again, the flexibility. If you're somebody that just wants a large amount in terms of your actual storage configuration, U.2 and U.3 is going to be far more practical. We do see sometimes users that are getting like 4 different drives, right? So they're like, I'm going to run 4 different 4 terabyte drives. Why not maybe consider something like a single 16 terabyte drive as opposed to going with 4 separate drives, which also is going to take more PCI lanes that you're going to be using for different types of configurations. And that's assuming that you even have a motherboard that has that many, right? So again, there's pros and cons to all of this. For a lot of users, M.2 is still a fantastic choice, and it's the reason why we've optimized our motherboards now to predominantly use the M.2 specification support. So you see most of our motherboards now are generally going to at least be 4, and then we sometimes have motherboards that even have more than that, 5 or even 6, PCIe, NVMe, M.2 slots on them, right? All right, let's go ahead and continue from there. So let's go to graphics cards, right, guys? All right, let's go ahead and jump into some GPUs. And I think here the first things that we're going to do is we're just going to give a little bit of a touch point on some updates in terms of just, some of the recent GPU launches that have come out. So I first want to go ahead and touch on, of course, during Computex, we had the formalized announcements, right, for items like the RX 9060 XT based models. So of course, ASUS being a worldwide leader in terms of graphics cards to market and offering both NVIDIA and AMD solutions. We do have announcements for both the 5060 series as well as for the 9060 XT series. So as always, we've got you covered. I can just going to quickly kind of touch on, again, the models that we're going to have within the 9060 XT, if that's something that interests you in terms of upgrading to one of these. So we will have 3 different models within the 90 XT series GPU. Our flagship or highest end model is going to be the 9060 XT under the TUF Gaming series. If you're kind of wondering what is really the big benefit, all of these are going to offer cool and quiet operation. They're all going to have things like dual ball bearing fans. They're going to have GPU guard design. They're all going to have stainless steel backplates. They're all actually going to have vented backplates as well. So they're all going to give you a great experience. It just comes down to what are maybe some of the more premium or maybe aesthetic design elements you want. So if you want RGB, TUF Gaming is going to be the only one that, say, take for instance, has RGB. If you also maybe care a little bit more about overclocking, you're going to have higher TGP levels that are going to be available to you on the TUF Gaming card than, let's say, you would have on the dual card, right? Also, just because of the bigger and more dense thermal assembly, the higher performing VRM, you tend to have a little bit more kind of margin in terms of the overclocking range support, right? So again, TUF Gaming, 9060 XT will be our highest end model. Again, the only card that has RGB. Then we go with the Prime series. The Prime series is kind of like our tried and true kind of sweet spot for a lot of users. I love also that his is going to be a 2.5 slot based design, just like the dual. So you have a great deal of flexibility to be able to fit this in just about any type of chassis configuration. You're going to be good to go. Still a triple fan based design. And all 3 of these do also have the PCI LED power monitor design on the actual connector. That just means that when you physically go to connect the actual cable to the connector, there's an LED that turns on. Assuming that you don't actually have physically the cable connected. So even though these are actually using your standard connectors, right, it still just offers you kind of an A to make sure that you're physically connecting the cable as opposed to maybe not having it fully seated. So all of these actually have that. And then the last card is going to be our dual series. So we haven't had actually an updated dual series until now. The prior dual models were all in the prior generation. So now we've updated our duals for both the 5060 series and also now with the 9060 XT. So that is going to be our 3 models that we have under the 9060 XT. Anybody here going to be considering jumping into a 9060 XT in terms of a graphics card? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that side. Rounding out on the other side of the spectrum, of course, we also do have a lineup for the NVIDIA series for the 5060 series. So that's going to be pretty similar there. Again, we're also going to have on that side 3 different models where we're going to have pretty much the same thing. You're going to have the TUF Gaming series, you're going to have the Prime series, and then you'll also have the Dual series. So you'll have 3 different models in that configuration. Okay. Sorry, I'm not trying to pronounce that. Is that Duode? I was asking, when are we getting some more 9060 XT? We actively pretty much are always allocating. You know, we almost get shipments, I'd say almost on a weekly basis. Sometimes there's variability in terms of how channel partners integrate their stock into their availability. So what I mean by that is, you know, Amazon might have a little bit of a different logistics schedule than, let's say, Micro Center, who has a different schedule than Best Buy or even our ASUS store. So the best thing you can always do is you want to take advantage of kind of the stock notifications if those e-tailers or those retailers are offering them to you, so that when you have those stocks actually get relisted, then you can be you can be notified. Keep in mind that, of course, that there's variability depending on which model you're talking about, right? You know, sometimes you might be maybe looking more for the Prime model versus the TUF Gaming model, right? So you might have to actively be looking at that process. But I would say that we're definitely active at consistently bringing in volume for pretty much all the models in all series. So, you know, you should hopefully just with a little bit of time and patience be able to pick up the model that you're looking for in that regard. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and jump into our next round of updates here. So let's go into our next graphics card series. So I think let's talk about, I guess, white really quickly. Yeah, let's go into, I think, white graphics cards. I think that's probably going to be, I think, interesting. All right, so as part of kind of one of the big announcements that we had kind of going into Computex, we reaffirmed saying, hey, if you're interested in terms of our white series based cards, we've got you covered. So we already gave confirmation at the very beginning of the year that, hey, you said as we got into kind of Q2, we're going to be launching our white series of graphics cards. So we have now formally pretty much confirmed and now made all the announcements for all the corresponding base models. So I'll talk about the white models, and then I'm also going to confirm for you the BTF based models. So you'll have a clear understanding. And then we'll talk about some of the other models that we also announced at Computex. So what you can see here is we have, of course, the ROG Astral, which will be available in white. We're also going to make the Prime series available in white and the TUF Gaming series. So this is actually pretty cool because it means that there's a white model within every single series that we have available to you. And it's kind of broken down by tier, if it kind of makes sense. So that means in the 5070 series, right, which generally is, of course, a lower cost option than, let's say, like the 5070 Ti or let's say the 5080, we've kind of tiered it out accordingly. So in that Prime series, you're going to get the 70 series in white, right? If you step up to the next level, you would get the TUF Gaming series, right? And then if you're going to the highest level, then that's where you have the ROG Astral in white. So we've kind of aligned it with that, and that kind of makes sense. Again, Astral is only available in an 80 or 90 class base part. So therefore, you can see that you have that when you're going up to that top end perspective. On the Prime level, like I said, that's going to be on the entry side, so 5070. So those are going to be the 3 corresponding models. We'll go in and give you a little bit of a shot. I really think our team did a fantastic job in terms of the ID design. I think the new generation ID design for the Prime series looks fantastic. It has this really nice chamfering kind of curve to it, which looks really clean. On top of that, you have that really bold and bright aesthetic that we have there, with even the fans also being a white. Sometimes I've seen some manufacturers where they do the fans in black and then they have the other parts in white. But I think here, especially if you want to go with the vertical mount, I personally prefer horizontal mounting, especially because I really like that kind of side profile. And then I like seeing the back plate, which is also going to be in white. I think that looks fantastic, but the card looked great in either configuration. So whether you want to go horizontal or vertical, you're going to be good to go. Keep in mind again, though, that the Prime series don't offer RGB lighting. So these are going to be really, like I said, a refined minimal design aesthetic, whether you're going to go with the white or the black based offering. Here you can see that a little bit more of an angled side profile. And keep in mind, all the Primes cards are going to be 2.5 slot. Okay. Next, we're going to go here. Instead of TUF Gaming immediately, we're just going to go to the ROG Astral. That's, of course, our flagship series based model, right? So these are ultimately the best of the best, right? Here we've kind of in a Venn diagram of when we're looking at durability, quality, feature, function, design, all of these different pieces. We are really looking to evolve the narrative in terms of what a graphics card design can be. There's some really cool things that a lot of people don't even realize that we've done within the Astral. A good example of this will be, I'll show a couple of maybe little preview images for context, where it's not just the build quality. Take, for instance, like the entirety of the shroud. There's no other manufacturer that actively has a graphics card on the market that uses a uni-bottle metal shroud. Pretty much all the graphics cards on the market are using like a composite plastic-based shroud. But here, this is actually one full metal piece, the entirety of the shroud. That also makes it pretty much the heaviest graphics card that's on the market. But we also do that from an anti-torsion perspective. It actually adds rigidity and it adds strength to the entirety of the card. So there's a lot of design work that we've done in a lot of different ways, whether it's with the PCB, the layout of the PCB, the components, the build material, the quality, right? All of those pieces. I think the card looks fantastic. You, of course, have this, reflective, of course, accent material, which I think really looks great, especially if you're going to do with the dynamic kind of elements that you have within RGB lighting. And we also have this kind of inlet lighting design. So that RGB accent strip, which is a really premium accent that we have here, this actually uses a specialized filter, which gives it a really kind of stylized, clean look to it that you don't traditionally get with normal LEDs. And it actually by default has like a really cool like loading display design to it, which looks really dynamic. I really love that. But the lighting actually will be on the inside, and then that will kind of give a soft level of visibility as well. So again, whether you use the card horizontally or vertically, you're going to get that really cool kind of bold and bright aesthetic. And something else I want to touch on that a lot of people forget, but over right here, all the ROG Astro cards do come with the Fan Connect 2 headers. So while it's not commonly used by a lot of users, you do have that as another benefit, right? Is that you can go ahead and connect two other fans to those, and you can use those to respond to the GPU temperature versus the CPU temperature, right? And of course, you still have all the standard stuff that we do on the Astro, like, the advanced per pin monitoring technology, which is exclusive right now to ROG cards, where if you actually want to know exactly in real time, see what the actual amperage is per pin on your actual 12x6 power connector, you can see that. We have an on-screen display warning system that actually would let you know whether or not you would want to shut down your system or connect your cables. Some really cool stuff that we're doing in there, right? And then we have the TUF Gaming series. So the TUF Gaming series will also be available in white. Now, this goes into the second update that I also wanted to touch on, which is going to be for our BTF-based graphics card updates. So we will actually have two BTF-based models. We're going to have the TUF Gaming, and then we're also going to have the ROG Astro. But the big update for this generation is what you see right here, which is going to be the new GC HPWR connector. So in the prior generation design, this actual connector was fixed and it was built into the graphics card. I personally preferred this design. The main reason why is because it allowed for I think the cleanest and the most minimal look that you had on the graphics card, because we were prioritizing aesthetics, which is what people said they really wanted within the BTF design. Now, there was a small level of people that I think gave feedback that said, I really want some form of compatibility to other systems. The reality is sometimes baking in compatibility isn't actually always ideal, because it can be done at the expense of the value proposition that you're trying to design the product for, right? And the reality is all of the other cards that we design are already openly interoperable. So you're really having to try to make that difficult decision to say, do you want to introduce something to benefit a community that's giving you feedback, which might not really be the actual target community that you're designing for. That being noted, we did collect the feedback from you guys in the community and the media, and they said, we really would like to try to see this. And whether or not it was really a legitimate pain point, or whether it was maybe just some generalized feedback, our team worked really hard to be able to make now a modular based connector. So what this means is now BTF cards are fundamentally both a standard graphics card and a BTF-based graphics card. So all you need to do is essentially just remove that connector. I think I have a video clip, so let me see if I can bring it up here. But that means that essentially you can use this graphics card on a BTF-based motherboard, or let's say maybe you buy this graphics card, you have a standard motherboard, you can use it on the standard motherboard. And then if you were to upgrade to a BTF system, maybe a year later, 2 years later, you could take your card, add the corresponding connector, and then bam, you would have a fully BTF enabled system. The only negative that you do have, I would say, within this, while you have, let's say, the improved interoperability, is going to be that now we also have to add in the legacy power connector that was previously removed from the graphics card, right? So now you're going to have the exposed connectors that you didn't used to see on the first generation. So if you looked on the first generation based BTF cards, you never saw any part of the graphics card that actually had an exposed connector, because it didn't exist. Now, because you want to be able to have this flexibility, that is present. Now, we have kind of come up with like a little cover system to kind of try to streamline it, but it is still present there. And, for some people, we'd love to see what your thoughts are right there. Is this something that we want to continue to be offering? Is this kind of hybrid functionality? Do you really think this is valuable? Or again, should we be double downing on the community's kind of preference to say, again, this is really what the intent is. So let's continue to focus on that intent and we can still offer a huge amount of our product stack, which complements those users that want the most broad, let's say, industry support, right, within a more kind of open ecosystem versus on the BTF side, right? So both of them are available here. Let's see what some people's thoughts are here. What do they think about the new design connector? Okay. So Sumin says, this is the best idea for sure, more flexible. Okay, so Sumin says he likes the idea right here. Let me see right here. Michael also notes that he likes the 2.5 base design. Ghost Rider goes, is when will the BTF motherboards be available? The first one that should be available should be the TUF Gaming B850, and I think that one you should probably maybe see visibility potentially by the very end of this month. If not, probably I'd say by the end of the first week of next month. So just watch, you know, the respective retailers, but we are pretty much actively getting ready to push it out there in terms of the channel distribution. For the Hero has still not been received in yet in terms of actually distribution. So that I would probably not expect until a little bit later on in the quarter. So again, if you're part of our PC DIY community, we'll give you updates in terms of the availability as that model's coming out, but that'll be coming in a little bit later. Okay. Let me go ahead and see any other quick questions right there. Says, I like the connector, also to allows for eBay troubleshooting. We never really had any troubleshooting requirements that were present for many users in any regards. So I don't know that that was an issue in the prior generation, but yeah, I mean, if that's something I guess you feel that provides a value proposition, that's a good feedback to have. So again, if you guys have feedback, I appreciate you guys letting us know that. So let's just see here right here. JJ, for the X870 Crosshair Extreme, when can we effectively find it in our local PC parts dealers or online retailers? You should be seeing it hopefully show up in the not too distant future. I would probably expect that hopefully by about the middle of next month, you should start to see that guy pop up within the channel. Same thing along with the Apex. Both the X870 Apex and the X870 Extreme, of course, were previously announced. We did show them off Computex, but I'm not touching on them here because they're not brand new, right? In the same way that the BTF model is brand new, but you'll be seeing them in the not too distant future. So just keep watching, and thanks for your patience on that, guys. I appreciate that. All right, so let me go ahead and quickly see if I do have that quick image or that little video clip. Give me 1 second here, guys, if I do have it. And I thought I might have one. Give me 1 second here. And this is for reference, just so what you guys can see when I was talking about kind of BTF advanced to BTF standard configuration. So here we can actually see that we have two samples of kind of like a Hyperion based BTF based build, and they both look great. I mean, they're both really nice looking builds, very similar in a lot of ways, but here you can actually see one with BTF in advanced and one in kind of like a more standard. So standard essentially going to mean you're going to always see that cable, right? And that's what you're going to see. So keep in mind with that new design, this connector is now going to essentially be kind of somewhat visible, where if you look on the prior generation card, right, you didn't actually see that connector at all. It didn't exist. It was essentially entirely removed, right? It's actually more complex to make the new design than it is the old generation, because we actually have to also maintain that that design circuitry, right, as opposed to kind of having it not present. So again, here you can see this is kind of BTF advanced, right? So you can see none of those cables. You get that optimal configuration with the BTF motherboard and the BTF-based graphics card. On this one, this is not a BTF-based motherboard, but I'm just showing you kind of for reference what you would see, right? You would have that really nice look on the motherboard, but you would see that one exposed cable. So again, BTF standard versus BTF advanced. All right. All right, let's go ahead and go into the next bracket right here. Let me just see, I guess maybe if there's any other quick questions that came up right there. Zachary, I'll be talking about the Noctua in just a little bit. Interesting feedback there. See, H2O Computer says, perfect connectivity and innovative, great design. BTF will make for some really clean builds. I appreciate nice cables too, but it's good to have some variance in the market. Yeah, and I think that's our goal, right? Our goal is, I think, just about giving choice to you guys as PC DIY builders, right? We love what we're doing in terms of designing a different ecosystem for users that want to be able to prioritize one type of focus. And that's really, I think, the right way to look at this narrative. It's not so much about saying that one is better than the other or it's even replacing one. It's about choice. In the same way some builders might want to build like a mini ITX system or a micro ATX system or go with EATX. EATX already has a much more limited ecosystem. You can only pick specific some chassis that work, and the vast majority of chassis won't fit in the ATEX based motherboard, so you already have kind of a limited ecosystem. But there are some users that maybe really want that larger look to the motherboard. They want maybe more feature set that can be put onto the motherboard with things like the Extreme, where you have that big beautiful 5-inch display, right? That's just a choice, right? So for us, it's about giving the building community more choice and more flexibility to approach the builds the way that they want to, right? So that's what we're really happy about. The way I kind of almost see it is it's like you've got mini ITX, micro ATX, ATX, EATX, and now BTF. The cool thing with BTF, though, is we can also still even play around with more form factor diversity, right? Where right now you're seeing ATX, but we have also released BTF motherboards in the micro ATX segmentation, and we're also evaluating some interesting design concepts for mini ITX BTF solutions in the future. So I think that could be very exciting for mini ITX-based builders in the future. Okay, all right. Let's go ahead and continue here and we're now going to go into a next one, which is going to be the ProArt based graphics card that we announced at Computex as well. So this one is, I think, a very interesting overall design that we did here in terms of the ProArt based graphics card, because it's not just the ID design, but the actual feature set is something entirely altogether different. So let me go ahead and bring up a couple of the images here that I have for the ProArt based graphics card, and we can kind of show you guys here. All right. So 1 second here. There we go. And you'll notice that the first thing that we're going to be seeing here in terms of the ProArt based graphics card is going to be that this is the SSD edition. Well, what do we mean by SSD edition, right? Well, we've done some pretty kind of cool stuff here. So some of you might remember that in the 40 series, we introduced a dual graphics card that actually had an M.2 SSD slot on the back of the graphics card. And what we were using there was PCI bifurcation. Essentially, the motherboard has the ability to essentially access and distribute those PCI lanes that aren't being realized, right? Because most graphics cards, reality is, even if you go up to like a 4080 or a 4090 or a 5080 or 5090, they're not going to actually use all 16 lanes. So you can actually half off those lane sets and then provide those lanes to something like an M.2 slot. And the big reason why you might want to do that is a couple of reasons. Well, one, when you normally install a graphics card into a motherboard, right, you're going to sometimes be blocking the slots that are going to be on the motherboard. And it can be a process, right, where I've got to remove the graphics card, then I might have to remove a heatsink that's on the motherboard and then put in the M.2 SSD slot. It might be faster, simpler, and easier to just take out your graphics card, or not even take it out, but just lift the heatsink on the back, put it in, put the heatsink back on, and bam, you're done. Plus, you also maintain the lowest latency because these are going to be CPU link lanes. And in our testing, we've actually also found that the thermal benefit is actually quite notable. It can vary depending on the power rating and the thermal dissipation requirements of the drive, but we've seen temperatures easily be improved by a factor of more than 10 degrees. And part of that is just because we can have a large heatsink that's there on the back, and you also get that assistive airflow that's coming actually from the heatsink assembly and fans that are on the graphics card, as opposed to in some scenarios, there's generally maybe not direct airflow that's being provided to your M.2 SSD slot. So what you're trying to do is mitigate that through like just large dead heatsink, which aren't always ideal for sometimes some of the lower slots on a motherboard. And keep in mind also, if we go to just even a couple of generations ago, while we have now current motherboards that have 2, 3, or even 5 M.2 SSD slots or even more, if you go back to even something like an X570, that's a great platform. Maybe you've got like a 5800 X3D and you want to upgrade it. You might only have 2 M.2 SSD slots on that motherboard. If you're on B450, you might only have 1 M.2 SSD slot, right? So this could be a pathway that we can see can provide value to kind of users in different ways. So what you'll see actually right there on the back here is that there's actually going to be a slot. So let's go ahead and take a little bit closer look. One of the cool things you'll notice is that right now we also tentatively have this design that has a wood grain finish to it, which is a little bit different. Love to see what your guys' thoughts. In the prior generation, people absolutely love the really refined and minimal design of the ProArt cards, which was just clean black with that gold accent. I like this. I also, though, almost feel like I would love to see both. I really liked also that all black design aesthetic, but this wood grain I think is very much in alignment with what we're doing with the ProArt, where it's refined and minimal, but it does give a little bit of aesthetic flair to it. And it also complements what we're doing with the wood edition versions of our ProArt chassis. So we have the ProArt PA602 and the PA401, which are two ProArt chassis, and they both do come in a wood variant. So this allows you to have some kind of synergy between the wood chassis if that is something that you're adopting into, right? So if we go into the back right here, you can actually see that unlike a normal graphics card, you'll notice that right there, there's a little bit of a raised area on the back plate, and that's your additional heatsink. So that heatsink, there's pretty much going to be two screws right there. You can see that you're just going to remove those two screws. And then from there, you would install the corresponding M.2 SSD. And the cool thing is now that can support all the way up to the fastest high-speed PCI NVMe Gen 5 M.2 SSDs. And like I said, you can maintain outstanding performance because of the link to the CPU lane with great thermal performance as well. For some of you that are in the more kind of professional or kind of maybe science and development kind of fields, we are also developing a really cool piece of software called our multi-LM tuner, which will allow you to actually create and run your own on-device advanced essentially LLMs. So if you want to be able to do some form of kind of AI language model development, you can actually use kind of your GPU. You can run this all locally for superior anonymity and security and privacy. And this is something we already started to do with MuseTree. MuseTree was a free piece of software for all of our 50 series graphics cards, where if you wanted to run generative AI, instead of having to go to the cloud and maybe submit and do stuff in the cloud, also have tokens or subscriptions, things like that, you could actually do it all directly on device, running on your GPU with, like I said, privacy and anonymity, and in a really easy prompt system where essentially we have these little bubbles that will pop up and you can just predictively kind of just generate and generate and generate. So we started off with giving you a really great streamlined option for generative AI based options that you can run on your device. And now we're going to be expanding in essentially into the LLM based options. So we'll have two great pieces of software that we're going to be providing to the community that want to essentially pursue those AI endeavors. Like I said, from the generative standpoint with MuseTree, or also now with the LM Tuner software for, like I said, that type of AI development. So, and also complementing this, I'll talk about this later in power supplies, but you can also see right here, we also are going to be updating new power supplies under our WS series up to 3,000 watts. So if you want to run some of those ProArt graphics cards, because keep in mind with those being a 2.5 slot design and going all the way up to 5080 series, we have motherboards where you might be running not two of those, three of those, but maybe even four of those. Well, if you're running a lot of GPUs and dense configurations, you're going to need some very performant-based power supplies configurations. So those Pro WS power supplies will be between 1,600 all the way up to 3,000 watts. So I'll have a 1,600 watt, a 2,200 watt, and then a 3,000 watt based model. All right. So let's see. What are your guys' thoughts there on the ProArt based graphics cards? What did you think? You thought this was pretty cool? Let's see here. We'll get to the coolers in a little bit. Will the RYOU 4 be released in a 240? No, we are only going to be releasing the RYOU 4 in a 360 based version, but we'll be talking about AI coolers in a little bit, right? Paskowitz knows would be good for ITX SFF builds where you would want more than two M.2 drives. Yeah, you're correct. Definitely. That is a key advantage right there. Like I said, in small form factor builds, not only because of the 2.5 slot design, which works well for those mini ITX chassis, but where you have limitations in terms of the number of M.2 slots, plus also thermals, that could definitely be a benefit for, I think, both mini ITX and micro ATX based builders, right? So both of those, right? Michael says, put the M.2 on the back of the motherboard. We've already done that in the past. We've done that, like we take, for instance, even like mini ITX-based motherboards. I don't know if this one does, not this one. This model doesn't have it because this one has the double stack design. One disadvantage, though, of generally putting M.2 on the back, though, is you're going to have thermal dissipation requirements. So you generally can't easily put like a heatsink on the back of the motherboard. There's a lot of variance in terms of the depth of the rear design. Plus, you also don't want to generally have that like metal on metal contact on the rear backplane. So you could have like an M.2 SSD slot, but it generally might not be fast, if that makes sense. If you don't care and you just want a density, we had kind of thought about saying, okay, sure, we could do that, but you would have, I think, a more limited value proposition in terms of that, right? So it is something that we've looked at, but I think this is still ultimately not only faster, simpler in terms of access, but also going to be better from a thermal performance standpoint, right? When will the 5090 whites be released? I talked about the white colors a little bit earlier, right? In terms of overall delivery and availability, you're going to see them kind of roll out. First, pretty much to market is going to be the Prime series, then will be the TUF Gaming series, and probably I think the Astral is probably going to actually be the last series. So I will say the kind of rollout will be happening all the way up until about probably late June for the white series of models. So there'll be some variability. What I would recommend if you want to kind of be up to date into it as most accurate as possible, if you're watching our PC DIY community group, like I talked about in the very beginning, if you join that group, Lee, who manages our community, will help to make sure to provide availability updates in terms of when we're going to see those models actually being released to the channel. So when we say, hey, the Prime models are now actually going out to channel, you can start to be aware. That means like within 7 to 10 days, you're going to probably see it start popping up at e-tailers. The same thing for the TUF Gaming model, the ROG STRIX model, or for the BTF-based models. Okay. Lookout News says, yes, plus onboard M.2. What is the max size? There's no limitation. So right now, the biggest M.2 drive that you can get is an 8 terabyte drive. You could use an 8 terabyte drive, so there's no issues in that regard. So if there's larger capacities that come to market as well, there shouldn't generally be any issues. And again, the main usually limitation in terms of density support actually tends to be that usually it's more thermal, because you have either a power restriction or you have a thermal restriction. So some devices which say that they only support maybe a lower density drive, it's because maybe those larger, more dense drives might take more power and they might have more heat. So they might be limited to only a certain density configuration. But here we've already validated the larger sizes. So as of right now, there's no limitation that you have to look at, right? You essentially should look at this exactly as the same type of slot experience that you would have on a motherboard, with the main benefit just being it's faster and easier to access that slot, and you're going to get better thermal performance. Okay. Let me go ahead and okay. All right. So let's go ahead and keep moving that along. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick drink of water right here. All right. Let's go to Noctua. Think of the Noctua graphics card. Oh, did I forget to put in? Did I forget to? I thought I put it in there. Give me 1 second. I thought I had a banner for the Noctua graphics card. And we're gonna, I know for the display guys out there, there's a lot of people that want to know about the monitors. Don't worry, we're gonna, there we go. We're gonna be talking about monitors in a little bit. So last GPU here in terms of actually the focus is going to be for the Noctua graphics cards. So many of you guys know we've done now Noctua for a couple of generations. We love working with them when we comes to the design and development of these Noctua-based graphics cards. So really the goal here with the Noctua cards is to be able to offer, our focus is really the coolest and quietest card in its class, right? That is really the goal with the Noctua. Now, this means two things. The Noctua cards, generally, every generation when we do release them, it is going to be the biggest graphics card that we make in terms of the overall slot design. So it is going to be the thickest graphics card. Now, for this generation, the big update that we went ahead and we implemented for this gen is going to be that we went to a triple fan design versus the prior generation, which was a dual fan design. But the reason why is because we actually implemented the Noctua A12 G2 120 millimeter fans. So this is the reason why really you have to go to so much of a thicker card, is you're literally using much larger diameter cards. So generally on most graphics cards, you're usually looking at, you know, a much smaller diameter, right? It could be like 60, 70, 80. Sometimes if they get pretty big, you might be even looking at something like a 90 millimeter base fan design, right? Which is what you will see sometimes on our highest performing cards. Also, they've even gone to like a thicker frame, and they have actually frames and housings to be able to focus kind of static pressure, right? But of course, when you have a partner like Noctua who excels at being able to offer ultra high performance based fans with great build quality, great tonality and performance, but they're using much larger base fans, you have to reaccommodate and redesign everything. So in this regard, it's really a full redesign. So the heatsink assembly is customized to benefit from the actual design and implementation that we have from the 3-fan configuration. So it is not the same heatsink assembly that we use on any of the other graphics cards. So we do have to kind of rearrange and optimize not only the heatsink assembly to align with the fan configurations, but we pretty much have to do everything from scratch. So this is also the reason why we don't launch these cards at the very beginning, because there's additional design work that we have to do in coordination with Noctua to kind of maximize the whole experience. So what do you guys think? Are you guys excited to see that move from, let's say, a dual fan configuration to the triple fan configuration. You also see a little bit of a difference in terms of the actual overall, I think, ID design aesthetic. In the prior gen, we had a little bit of this kind of gold flecking, which I think looked really cool. It gave a little bit of a kind of a premium, almost subtle sparkle to it, which I thought was really cool. In this gen, you won't actually see that, but I still think it's a great looking card. Let me go ahead and bring up to you here kind of the rear backplate and design. You can kind of see this and kind of look at it here. And this right now, as of right now, we'll only be doing this with the 5080 as far as for the model. So just keep that in mind. So here you can see this is going to be the front facade for the graphics card. Again, you've got those 3 AF12 120 millimeter G2 series based fans on there, right? And then here you've got that beautiful brown backplate, right, with the Noctua based iconography on there. Really, really cool design. As far as kind of the core feature set, you'll get a lot of the premium stuff that we're already doing within the current generation. So you're going to get things like the phase change thermal compound that we use for the actual pad. That is going to be the primary, actually, thinner interface material that we introduced for all of our new 50 series base cards. You're going to get the dual VBIOS based design implementation. You're going to also, of course, get the per PCI, excuse me, not the per PCI, but you're going to get the PCI LED power monitoring tech that's also going to be on this graphics card. You'll get our, of course, auto extreme production process, high quality, of course, based power componentry on there. So what do you guys think about the Noctua based update? So Michael says, looks great, but not my taste in terms of the actual overall design. Is that a Strix owl I see? Yeah, there's a little bit of kind of like a little bit of a design aesthetic that you kind of see in there, right? Okay. So Michael says, yeah, it's definitely a large card, right? I mean, yeah, the prior generation, if I remember correctly, the 4080 was 4.3 slot. So it is a very, very large card. So you do need to kind of make sure that you do have definitely that space within whatever you're going to be doing, because this will be larger than even what we have with the ROG Astral in terms of the overall heatsink density, right? So it is a very big card. But again, if you really want to prioritize not only that Noctua design aesthetic, but you also want absolutely the quietest card in its class, this will be a great option. Now, that's already an impressive testament, because the reality is, if you take a look at not only the Prime model, the TUF Gaming model, and the ROG Astral model, all of those already offer great thermal performance with actually cool and quiet operation. So we had to kind of even go to the next degree, right, in this. And so pretty impressive. We haven't finalized the numerical data, so we'll have more information to share as we get closer to the launch in terms of what you can expect from the overall targeted performance levels. So if that's something you're interested in, just make sure to keep it tuned to the streams for those corresponding updates. All right, guys. So that takes care of all of the graphics card updates. But I do have one last one for you here that's kind of graphics card adjacent. So let me go ahead and bring this guy up. And this is going to be the XG Station. So this is actually something that we have not had in quite some time. And that is going to be an external graphics card dock. Now, this is not to be confused, again, not to be confused with the XG Mobile. So the XG Mobile is actually made by our other team at ASUS, which is called our systems team. So they do all of the system, again, finished products. So there's an XG Mobile, which uses actually an integrated mobile GPU. The XG Station is actually a discrete system that's designed as an actual graphics card dock. So you can use whatever graphics card you want. If you want a 5060 Ti, then great. If you want a 5080, then you can use a 5080. If you want to use a 5090, you can use a 5090. It doesn't matter. So all of those options are available to you. You pick your GPU that you want to use on the unit, right? So let me go ahead and bring up the XG Station here. And we'll show you right here. All right. Okay, perfect. Oh, where did it go? Okay, there we go. All right, here you guys go. So this is going to be the XG Station. So this will be actually utilizing Thunderbolt 5. So you do have ultra high speed bandwidth available to you. There'll be 4 USB ports on here, 3 which are going to support USB-C connectivity at 10 gigabits rating. It will, of course, also have ASUS or RGB lighting. So if you want to have some synchronization in there, you're good to go. And now here, when you take a look at it, you'll notice that you don't see anything, and that's because it's open frame. And the main reason why I decided to go kind of with an open frame or a dock as opposed to quote unquote an enclosure is because there's so many different types of graphics card designs that, one, there's a lot of graphics cards that look really cool. So why not actually show off the graphics card? One, that allows you to have a really cool design aesthetic present when you utilize it. But then also, I think more important is that we wanted to have the flexibility that regardless of the card that you picked in terms of the design, you didn't want to be limited by what the enclosure might dictate, right? So in this regard, you can go with whatever graphics card you want. Again, you could go with our 5070 Ti, you could go with a 9070 XT, you could go with 5080, you could go with a 5090. It doesn't matter. They will all work. Plus with next generation cards, whatever they might be, you can fit these, you can work with it, and you're going to be good to go. The other really cool thing here is that this also supports our BTF-based design, which means that if you use a BTF graphics card, there's no visible cable at all, right? It's just going to be really cool because you're going to be able to dock the graphics card directly on this. Now, the other part that you would want to keep in mind is that the power supply is actually bring your own PSU. So the PSU will not come pre-integrated into this, but it's great because they're not like a large external power adapter that you have to connect here. It'll just be the same type of IC cable that you use for something like your power supply on like a traditional desktop computer. You just plug that into the back of the power supply that you will install in, and that is going to be determined by you as far as the wattage, right? Like if you got a higher performing GPU, then you need to use maybe like an 850 watt versus maybe if you're going more mid-range and you're fine with like a 550 or 650 watt, that's the choice is up to you, right? So you're going to go with the power supply that works based on your GPU selection, right? Plus, also that gives you the modularity to be able to change out the noise profile, the power efficiency requirements, all of those different kind of targets that you want. And of course, ASUS has a great lineup of power supplies that will be fully compatible with the XG Station 3. So that is going to be our external graphics card dock. For probably most of you guys that are on the desktop side, this might not be interesting to you, but for those of you that I think are maybe hybrid users or definitely have laptops that are looking to be able to kind of upgrade the performance, you're going to be good to go. Now, keep in mind that even though it's a Thunderbolt 5 rated product, it's still fully compatible if you have USB 4 or Thunderbolt 4 based devices as well. So you can still go ahead and utilize this even if you're using an older high-speed based IO standard as opposed to exclusively it being Thunderbolt 5. Thunderbolt 5 just means that it's kind of the fastest option right now that's available if that's the direction you want to go in within that respect, okay? Let me see. I think I might have an image of the XG Station with it on the GPU side, so give me 1 second. Let me see if I have it here. I think I have one, so you guys can just see what it looks like there. Do I have it here? I think I do. XG Station. There we go. Okay, so here you guys can see an example of the graphics card installed, and there would be no visible cable because, of course, like I said, that is going to be for the BTF-based configuration. But of course, if you were utilizing it with a traditional graphics card or non-BTF, then you would, of course, have at least some visible cable that's connected to it. Okay. All right. Let me see. So Suman's asking, any price or release details? No price that's confirmed as of yet. In terms of release details, I'd say probably we'll have more information as we get closer to probably the end of Q3 timeframe, going into early Q4 timeframe in that regard, right? Red Goes says, why don't we get smaller compact design like NVIDIA? I don't see any benefit from bit cards with the same specs. I'm not sure what you mean by there's no benefit. So we do offer quite a range of actually compact designs. So if you look at the Prime models that we offer, take for instance, let's say our NVIDIA solutions, those are all 2.5 slot. Doesn't matter whether you're looking at something like a 5060, 5070, 5080, or those are all going to be 2.5 slot. If you even compare that against the FE-based solution, the FE solution is a very nice design, but we will offer you cooler and quieter operation. And as you actually go into even the higher end model set, there are going to be differences where if you actually start to evaluate not only the GPU temperature, but the VRM temperature, or things like even the VRAM temperature, you will actually notice a significant reduction in actually that temperature design. As far as sometimes bigger cards, there can also be more what's called like thermal isolation across the components. There are also going to be other elements like what's called like a decoupled a decoupled design in terms of the frame. So let me actually show you this. I don't want to detract to this, but I think this is a really interesting question to kind of look at when you talk about the totality of what might you be getting when you go with, let's say, like a non-standard design. So, or what we would refer to as kind of like an A and B card design. So I'm going to use right here, just for this instance, the ROG Astral, but this would actually apply on actually all of our 50 series cards. So the Prime models, the TUF Gaming cards, and the ROG Astral. So let's say you wanted to compare an FE 5080 to any one of those three models, this would actually hold true. So let's look at something like this. So this is actually, photo credit goes here to TPU, I believe, here on this side. So this is not our image, but this shows you. So in a traditional graphics card, most of the graphics cards on the market, they don't use what's called a decoupled design. This would actually include that to the FE. Now, a decoupled design has a couple of benefits. It makes the card a little bit larger, but from a disassembly standpoint, it actually can be advantageous to you, because what it means is that you can decouple just the fan shroud by itself. So if you wanted to clean the heatsink assembly, you wanted to clean the fans, you can do so without affecting at all any of the underlying components. So you don't actually have to remove the heatsink assembly, which can cause you to rip the thermal pads or affect the actual bonding contact of the thermal interface material or thermal compound that you're going to have between the heatsink and the GPU. You can't do that with an FE design, right? That unified design. If you wanted to do anything there, you're going to have to remove the entirety of the thing. There's no decoupling, just let's say the shroud from the heatsink assembly. And this is actually very similar. Many other competitors have that same disadvantage, right? Where you can't decouple one part from the other. This also makes just serviceability and accessibility, I think, more streamlined, and it's overall better experience. There's also going to be other differences in terms of kind of the crowding of, let's say, the PCB design. So this gets a little bit more technical, but let's look at like another design area that could be different. So we can look at this. And again, this is also photo credit, again, to Tech Power Up. But let's look at like an example right here between our card and then just another card that you might have on the market, right? So if we take a look right here, what you can see is going with, let's say, a larger card, we might be able to do what's called more optimized layout considerations. So what you can actually see right here is in this section, there's actually no crowding to any of the componentry. Sometimes making a smaller PCB, while that could maybe optimize for, let's say, the airflow design that NVIDIA wants, we might have a different type of design which we feel is more favorable to spread out, having focused airflow across the entirety of all of the components, right? So let's say the GPU, the memory, and the PCB, all of those kind of surrounding areas. But an example here is what we do know sometimes from RMA analysis and failure is that over strain, flexibility, torsion, and flex, having sometimes things packed into a certain area can cause the repairing to be more challenging, because it means that if you have to do like what's called solder work, you might have to desolder all of these little components because maybe there's a crack that happens somewhere in here, or maybe there's some type of damage that happens. So now you have to remove all of those surface mount components, fix the PCB, right? And then on top of that, you have to then put on back all the components. And this design, because you have actually more separation, which makes it a larger card, the repair is essentially enhanced. It's far more streamlined. It's simpler. It's actually lower cost. There's a lot of advantages to it. So it really depends on the totality of what you want to have within the design. What is your intent, right? And I think that for us, if you look at the majority of like a mini ITX chassis that are on the market, all of the newer chassis that are on the market have readily adopted that generally 2.5 is not a limiting factor, right? They can all readily accommodate that. And we saw that with the strong support that we had within the prior generation of cards like the Prime, the Dual, and the ProArt based models, right? So we think the value set that we bring is that great temperature performance. Like I said, the optimization in terms of the power design, and even things like the IO configuration. Again, even going sometimes with the bigger card, we can use a bigger bracket. We can have things like maybe dual HDMI ports, which a lot of people like. So there's a lot of little things that can be relevant to you, maybe not every single one of them, but if that's something that you have interest in, you know, also, like I said, we cover a lot of these points sometimes in our community group. We can share details like that. But there's a lot of things to kind of evaluate and consider in terms of the total design. Hopefully that maybe answers a little bit of the question right there for you. All right. Release date, Noctua, we haven't finalized the release date. I'm probably just saying, you know, keep tuned, right? Probably for some time in, you know, Q3 or something like that, right? Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and continue on here. So that's the XG station. All right, so let's go into, I'm actually going to let the community decide. Do we want to talk about the brand new ROG Falcata 75% split keyboard, or do we want to go into monitors? So I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to take a sip of water right here, and I'm going to give you guys five-second countdown. All right, the first one to get to 5 recommendations, or do we go with the peripherals, so the brand new Falcata mouse, keyboard, and the ROG HARPE ACE II mouse, or do we talk about monitors? Which one's it going to be? Drop it in the chat. Let me know. Oh, comments are coming in. Okay. It looks okay. We got monitors, we got keyboard, but then we got monitors, 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 monitors. It seems like we got a lot of people. Okay, and then right here, let's talk serious monitors, please. All right. So let's go ahead and oh wow, I love that. Thank you so much for saying the sheet too. There's some really cool stuff that I really like about the sheet too. We will talk about peripherals in a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and talk about monitors first. So let's get into displays, guys. We have some really amazing updates in terms of our displays. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first one that we want to go ahead and touch on is going to be the new ROG STRIX XG32U series. So this is actually aligned with Computex. The big thing that we did here is we introduced, again, you know, ASUS is really the definitive leader when it comes to gaming displays. We've been the most innovative there. We have the longest track record of bringing the latest, most exciting technologies to market, from everything from being the first manufacturer to release a G-Sync enabled monitor. Even when it was literally a DIY kit, you literally had to have a DIY experience to bring in the G-Sync module into that, to many of the first type of gaming displays. A little insight for you on history, you know, we were the first manufacturer to actually embed a joystick OSD system into a display to allow you to more easily access the display experience on your monitor. But tons of stuff. The really cool thing though that we did here is what we've seen is we're right now the only manufacturer that does both WOLED solutions and QD-OLED solutions. When you look at any other competitors in the marketplace, they're generally going to be only either a WOLED manufacturer or a QD-OLED manufacturer. ASUS actually right now is unique in that we offer both. And part of the reason why we do that is not only just to be able to offer the consumer breadth and depth in terms of the choice, but also because inherently the default production has differences in terms of actually kind of the screen appearance. Generally with WOLED, you have a standard what's called AR matte-based display. So that's an anti-reflection based display. Overall, for most users, this is a kind of the tried and true experience. It works really, really well. It can offer you, I think, good sharpness, good contrast, good clarity, great ambient light handling, right? Then you have QD-OLED, which because it omits a polarizer, some people like that because it's a semi-gloss, right? It has what they kind of look at as being a little bit more contrast, a little bit more pop, but it also doesn't necessarily perform as well for ambient light handling, especially if you have kind of direct lighting that'll be present there. You can also even have sometimes color fringing that can happen where the black will kind of shift almost into a little bit of a purple tinge. Now, if you can control your ambient lighting, that can be great. But depending on your scenario, again, this is why we've offered both, because we've offered great options within the, like, let's say the PG32 UCDM, which is a QD OLED, and then the PG32 UCDP, which is a WOLED solution. Now we're excited to give you another option within the WOLED lineup, going from that traditional AR-based option to an actual glossy option. Now we did this already in our 1440p lineup, where we introduced the world's first only true glossy WOLED, but now we've advanced beyond that type of original design to what we call our true black glossy design. So let me go ahead and bring you guys an image up here and talk a little bit about this. So the really cool thing is one, well, I would say it's three kind of key goals. One, we wanted to help to reduce part of the issue that you see in terms of that color tint or that color fringe. So kind of right here, you can see with that direct kind of lighting on the QD OLED display, it kind of tends to make that go from that black to sometimes having that little bit of that purple kind of tinging effect. The other one is to also reduce kind of haze, which inherently improves kind of that sharpness, and overall the perceived contrast is also another area that we wanted to improve upon there. And with the True Back Glossy, pretty much it is the best in all of those scenarios. You get an amazing experience on that side of the fence. So you can see here, we've got the glossy WOLED, right, from the prior design implementation. Then we've got the new True Black, and then you can see the semi-gloss. Now, we're going to continue to offer essentially these choices, and these are now essentially an update to the prior PG32 UCDP, but there is also a little bit of a spec change. So we're going to actually have two different versions of the display. One will be a 4K 165 with an FHD toggle at 330 hertz that also incorporates our Neo proximity sensor. The cool thing of the Neo proximity sensor is there's actually a little time of flight sensor, a 3D depth sensor that is built into the monitor that can detect your presence, and that can help to turn off the panel, because one thing people don't realize is that the more that the panel's on, not only does that contribute to burn-in, but it also contributes to what's called thermal ramping. Essentially, the temperature ramps up, and the cooler that you can keep the monitor, the better in terms of the long-term health of the monitor and the reduction of burn-in. If you can stay at or below 60 degrees, that's favorable. So that's what we're trying to do, is essentially reduce the likelihood for burn-in, reduce thermal ramping, right, through this really cool Neo proximity sensor. And that's an ASUS exclusive. You're not going to find that at any other manufacturer. Many other manufacturers have something like a basic proximity sensor, but they're not really that responsive and they're not accurate. The 3D depth sensor that we're using here is the same type of sensor you get on an advanced camera, like in a smartphone, down to the millimeter level, and it can also even be tuned manually by the user. So all of those will come with the Neo proximity sensor. You'll have that true black gloss option, and there will again be two models: the 4K 165 with the FHD toggle to 330, and then you'll also have another one which will have a toggle option to 480, but also have a 4K 240. So that'll be the higher end option. So there's essentially two different price points that we're going to have for those XGs based on the spec that you want. So do you want that kind of the premier 4K 240 and then FHD toggle at 480, or do you want the 4K 165 with the FHD toggle at 330? Now, one other item that I do also want to note here on this monitor is going to be that they do support a really great technology that we call aspect ratio control. So aspect ratio control sometimes gets overlooked at, but I think it actually makes this more than just a dual monitor. It almost makes it kind of like a triple or quad based monitor configuration, because what is unique about ASUS's implementation at aspect ratio is you can actually have the monitor set to run in a different window size with a different resolution target. Now, because you have OLED, which has what's called permissive pixel technology, right? It means that per pixel they can turn off and on. When it's really black, it's truly black. It's because it's turned off. So that means when normally you get these black bars, even if you're running in a smaller window, you don't really perceive it because there's no haloing or blooming that might be happening in those other parts. The cool part to this is you can run this monitor like in 1440p at 27 inches at 240 hertz. So now you've literally have another monitor, not just that FHD toggle. And because you're also scaling that down, the PPI, the pixel density, is still really nice. Like we sell 1440p, 240 hertz, 27-inch monitors. So you could literally turn that into that. And that also gives you a benefit because that's a lot easier to run than maybe the 4K at 165 or the 4K at 240, right? You can also even play around with this even crazier. If you wanted to go to like 4K at 24 inches at 240, you could also do that because the aspect ratio is actually unlocked. So you can actually set your own resolution targets and put those in. Now you go, well, like, why might I do something like that? Sometimes the tighter field of view, especially at that higher resolution, can allow you to really have super sharp focus at the foreground and the background. So sometimes moving targets in the background, you could really pick them up sometimes more easily in that kind of tighter field of view than you might have in that bigger field of view. So I really love that we have the most comprehensive aspect ratio control on the market. We're also going to have, of course, all the great features that we normally have. So like our in-Windows display control with Display Widget Center, where you can do key bindings to things like brightness with your keyboard. You can have app syncing where you can change specific profiles to specific applications. Like if you open up your browser, it can be in sRGB mode. And then if you go into racing game, it can go into racing mode. And then if you go into FPS, you can have, your shadow boost enabled, or you can have contrast increased, or whatever you want. You can do that on a per application level. All of the OLED care options are available to you to control real time in the OSD in Windows, as opposed to having to physically do a control. There's a lot of other really great stuff like unclamp controls for HDR and also for sRGB. We don't clamp those down, so you have the granularity and control to tailor that stuff. So these are two fantastic updates that we have, I think, that I'm very, very excited about, and I think a lot of people are going to love. Now, a teaser for you guys before I get into the next one is I'm going to tell you, for those guys that are joining the stream, here's a little bit of a teaser. We are looking to confirm for you that we have an upcoming WOLED 540 hertz 27-inch display that will also have that true black glossy design that we're going to have on this display. So if you do want maybe that smaller size, there will be coming a 540 hertz. Now, keep in mind, we haven't even launched yet the 500 hertz QD OLED solution that we already announced at CES, but that will be coming in the not too distant future. So ASUS is, again, bringing it. When you talk about options, nobody else is giving you as much option as we have. We have already right now the fastest 1440p that you can get, which is the 1440p AQDP. So that's 27-inch 1440p 480 hertz. We're going to then have, of course, the upcoming 500 hertz 1440p 27 inches. And then we've got the, of course, 4K 240s and with the FHD toggle if you get the UCDP. And then we've got these new updates. And then we're going to have this 540 hertz true black glossy. And then we are also, for those of you guys that might be on maybe a more aggressive price point, we're also going to be updating the XG27 AQDMG, which has been a fantastic option that we've had. It's pretty much our most price aggressive OLED monitor that we make. And this one, we will be updating it from the original, essentially glossy based design implementation to the true black glossy. So I think that is going to continue to probably be kind of like the super sweet spot if you really want to move into OLED, but not go into the much higher pricing that you see with some of the other displays. This is going to be a very exciting monitor when we look to release this. But there's also some really still great LCDs that we're going to be updating in the not too distant future with the new TUF Gaming 5 series. So if OLED is really too expensive for you, if you're in that price point where it's like, I'm looking at, 250, 350, $400 max, I got some really exciting options for you that are going to be coming up into the TUF Gaming models that I'd love to kind of talk about here in a second. But those are going to be some cool updates for you guys. These right here are cool, some cool teasers. So keep in mind that we will have those two right there. So those are coming up. And again, that's a follow-up to the XG32U series. So before I get into the next display, let me see if there's any quick questions on those. I don't have confirmed pricing for you guys, so you guys are just going to have to wait and see when it comes to the pricing on that side. But I think those are two pretty exciting updates. So let me go ahead and see right here. Hey, Wes from Lano Seas, any updates on the ROG, the Milnor? That's our UPS. Not as of yet. I think right now, probably we're not going to have any updates until probably mid Q3, late Q3 timeframe on that guy. So, yeah. So this is actually a really good question, is I keep forgetting the difference between the PG and the XG series. So let me show you a really quick thing on this, because this is actually kind of important. So PG series is our flagship series, and those are going to be ROG Swift. Generally, when you see XG series, that is ROG Strix. So just like anything that we have within the ASUS ecosystem, TUF Gaming is like the good, ROG Strix is the better, and then ROG without any Strix is the best. So it's a good, better, best strategy. So let's look at a good example of something like the XG and the PG and how it would exist right now. Like, where would there be a difference? So I'm going to go ahead and bring up two monitors, and I will show you where the kind of difference might lie. Okay, so we will use our recently launched 27-inch OLED monitors between the XG and the PG. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So here's the PG. So this is the higher end monitor. It's a little bit more expensive than the XG monitor. Now, from generally the base specification standpoint, sometimes maybe the highest end spec might only be found on the PG. But in this scenario, actually, the spec is identical. They're literally both the same new 4th generation QD-OLED panels. They have the anti-flicker tech. They have the Neo proximity sensor. They're both 4K 240. They have unlocked aspect ratio control. Almost everything's identical. So where is the fundamental difference? Okay, so here there's going to be three items. One is the base. This is a full metal base. It's a much more premium base that we have on here. This is going to be a plastic and metal base. Now here, you might think it's only plastic, but it's not actually. If like you were to break the plastic, you would actually find that on the inside, it's actually a cast metal base, right? Which adds weight to it. So it's still actually very good quality, but that's where there's some reduced cost, right? Like this is going to be all metal, and this is going to be plastic and metal, right? Now, some people actually might favor this, though. Maybe they like the little bit more compact base design that we have on this. Plus, this one also has like the little slot that we have there if you want to be able to put in your phone. The PG model comes with Dolby Vision support, where the XG does not give you Dolby Vision. Now, that's only going to be really critical in a couple of key games, because not most games don't use Dolby Vision. Or maybe you're somebody that uses a lot of like streaming on demand services and you want to watch Dolby Vision, so you can get that most premium kind of HDR experience. Well, you get Dolby Vision certification there, right? And then another difference would be this one comes with DP 2.1, which in reality, you have to have literally the most cutting edge hardware. You have to literally have a 50 series graphics card to have DP 2.1 support, right? That's not the majority of people that are out on the market. Also, maybe you're entirely fine with DSC. For me, to be honest, I have no problem playing in DSC. I don't see a perceivable difference. I would say a more real world experience might be that what's called black frame delta. So sometimes when you're alt tabbing between a game, you can actually have like a black screen that sometimes people under the DSC, they don't like that, right? And so with having the DP 2.1 uncompressed, that could be favorable, right? Because you don't want to have that little kind of black box being introduced, right? Sometimes when you're alt tabbing out. So those are three differences. Really, You do have to kind of, it varies sometimes between one model to the other model. So you have to kind of check inherently what might be the difference between XG and PG. But a lot of the core things that I think are very important in terms of the experience. So the warranty, the factory calibration, generally the OSD controls, all of those things are going to be consistent between the models because they're still under the ROG lineup. It's just, I would say there's going to be some more premium additions you're going to get within the PG series than you're going to get within the XG series. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay. All right. Let's go in and I'll check one other question. If not, we're going to keep going on the monitors right there. I love that, man. Pasquit says display widget is goated, man. That's very, very good, right? Seriously, ASUS display control is so much better than the competition. We've worked really hard on it. I do agree. If you guys have not tried Display Widget Center since its release, I think it's really right now the best overall well-rounded software for Windows management of your OSD display. For me, I don't ever physically touch my display anymore. I just use Display Widget Center. I find it so much more convenient, especially for little things. Like one of my creature comforts is I love, like I said, having the app profile syncing. And then I love being able to control my brightness with just a keyboard hotkey where, you know, like in the beginning of the day, I'm fine with it maybe being brighter, but then maybe later at night, I just want to be able to adjust the brightness down, right? Because maybe I don't want the monitor to be as bright. So it's really nice and convenient to be able to use the Display Widget Center software, right? Okay. Yeah, so Dan Evil says, I hate the DSC black screen. So that's where the DP 2.1 experience would be favorable. But again, to resolve the DP 2.1, you also would ideally need to also have a corresponding graphics card, right? So you need to keep that in mind. Zachary, any news on anything bigger than 35? As of right now, no. Everything I'm going to be talking about is all going to be within underneath a 35 in terms of the actual size for the monitors, okay? All right, so let's go into the next guy here is going to be, this is going to be really be for the competitive guys out there. So I know I covered the OLED first because probably most of you are going to be most interested in the OLED side of the fence. But, you know, we are always at the forefront of the industry, again, at focusing at, you know, the premier performance. So again, this is going to be our premier performing motion clarity based display. So this is going to be the ROG STRIX ACE. ACE always means esports focus. If you're kind of wondering when you see ACE in the name, that ACE, you should almost think it's esports. And so that means that we're really designing it for peak performance, right? So this is going to be the fastest monitor that we offer in terms of refresh rate. So 610 hertz. It's a new Super TN-based panel. This, just like those, so some of the prior generation TNs are significantly improved in terms of you don't want to think that this is a bad performing TN. In terms of colors, it's quite nice. You can actually see it's 90% DCI-P3 coverage. It's factory calibrated, so it's going to give you bold, bright, great clarity. In fact, actually, the SDR brightness on this will be better than OLEDs because LCDs still have better standard SDR-based brightness. And the majority of you are generally still gaming and using your desktop always in SDR. I'd love to know right now, who's watching right now? Are any of you actively gaming in HDR? Or when you're still gaming, are you still gaming exclusively in SDR? Overall, as a whole, most people are still in SDR, right? So some of the cool things that we've done with this monitor is one, of course, you have that 610 hertz. We also have our brand new ELMB2 for our enhanced motion clarity technology. So this is going to be offering zone-based adjustments algorithms to be able to really offer, I think, an truly impressive level of motion clarity performance. It is really absolute best in class, and it's going to be a significant improvement compared to anything else within the industry. We also have the aspect ratio control functionality on here, the Display Widget based center software. Some of the other cool things that I really actually love about this display, though, is we went ahead and even made the base even more compact, smaller, because generally for these smaller base displays, you find competitive players want to kind of really bring this monitor in, keep it really tight against kind of their keyboard and their mouse configuration, and really kind of zone in on the display, right? We also did something pretty cool in terms of the way that we optimized the actual minimum height. So normally, most monitors don't go down super low, but when you're using such a compact-based display, you might actually want to kind of get really close to it. And within that, you might actually find that there's a limitation based on the minimum height. So we've actually redesigned it to where you notice right here that we reduced the minimum height to even go to a lower level, but it also has an angular kind of almost scoop and adjustment. So if some of you guys have seen people kind of crouching in and kind of leaning in, we've kind of optimized the layout design specifically for this type of user, right? So again, really for users that want to have that competitive edge and really dial into that 1080p based gaming experience, this is where it's going to be at, right? So if you want kind of that top tier level of motion clarity. The ELMB is going to be there, right? The optimized tuning of the panel. This has ultra low input based processing as well, which really aligns well with, of course, the fastest based GPUs, as well as, of course, it's also aligning with things like our 8K keyboards and mice, right? To be able to make sure that from end to end across the latency chain, you can make sure to have kind of that winning edge, right? So whether you're jumping into Valorant, Rainbow Six Siege, right? CSGO, Call of Duty, right? Overwatch, Warframe, whatever it might be, right? Whatever your FPS of choice when it comes to a competitive standpoint, this is going to set the benchmark. This one should be coming in, I would say, in early Q3 in terms of the time frame. We have not finalized the price point yet for the North American region, but I would expect here at a minimum to at least see the same price that we had for the ROG Swift 540 hertz display, if not higher. So just make sure to keep it tuned in terms of that if this is going to be a monitor that is going to be of interest to you. All right. So, and I also say for people gaming in HDR or SDR, right now, just drop in just refresh rate. What is the refresh rate of your current gaming monitor? All right. So Paskowitz says HDR when possible. And then Rodney also says, I game in HDR. I'm with you. I love gaming in HDR. I mean, I've been playing on even when we had our mini LED, and actually sometimes I still actually enjoy the mini LED HDR experience more than even OLED, just because you can still even have brighter highlight points, right? Especially if it's a really good mini LED based panel, can still be quite compelling in that regard. But yeah, I mean, for me, when you do have really that immersive experience of a real HDR game, it is actually hard to kind of go back to an SDR experience. But as a whole, most people are still gaming in SDR, right? So feedback from people here, Paskowitz is, so Zachary says HDR at 120. Paskowitz is at HDR at 240. Michael is at HDR at 144. And then Tech is at HDR at 165. Actually, I'm surprised here, but maybe not, right? We're talking to the ROG community here, the PC DIY enthusiast community. So not surprising to see that we've got more people than standard here. Actually, every one of the commenters decided to go ahead and throw in their hat to say, no, they are gaming in HDR, which is very cool to see. So very cool. We almost had the entire spectrum right there kind of represented, right? HDR 144, 165, 120, and then also 240, right? So pretty cool, man. Kudos to you guys. Very cool to see. All right, let's go ahead and continue on there. So another update in terms of actually the displays is going to be the PG32 UCD MR. So on this guy, it's going to pretty much be the same exact monitor that we have right now with the PG32 UCDM, which that's going to be our 4K 240 hertz QD OLED based monitor. So I'm not going to recap all the spec and feeds on that. That's pretty much right now the flagship kind of 4K 32-inch based monitor on the market. The main thing that you're going to get with the UCD-MR is we're updating this to now also have the Neo proximity sensor and DP 2.1 80 gigabits of certification. So those are really your main updates, right? As what you're going to get on this one. So if you've kind of been holding back that you didn't want to adopt in that because you really, really wanted DP 2.1, when we first launched that, there was not even a graphics card on the market that could support DP 2.1. But now that, of course, the GPUs are available, we're going to be making that transition update. So we're going to be going from that PG32 UCDM to the UCD-MR. So the UCD-MR will be implementing that DP 2.1 support, and again, also have that Neo proximity sensor. All of the other great ASUS OLED-based design features, functions, and spec are all going to be there. So aspect ratio control, display widget center, the threaded mount, right? Unclamped and unlocked controls, all that good stuff. It's all the same. There's not going to be any difference in that regard. Dual mode UCDP, no updates or changes for the UCDP, but keep in mind, the XG32 is like an update to the UCDP, right? Because those are going to get the true black glossy based panel updates, right? And then you're also going to have, like I said, the different FHD toggles. So I would say updates to the UCDP would be those XG32 32 models, right? Also keep in mind critically that there is a difference in the power delivery spec between the XG and the PG. So the PG gives you that full higher performing USB-C PD support. So if you really like having that high wattage PD power envelope, so that 90 watts, that is going to be a big difference. The XG32s have USB-C, but with base PD power support. I believe it's 15 watts. So both of those models are going to be 15 watt base USB-C power delivery, still supporting display signal, right? But compared to like the UCDP will have a more premium power delivery output, right? And again, also the base will differ again, right? That'll have that full metal base, whereas those XG models won't have that metal base, right? So that is where there's going to be some differentiation in that regard, right? Correct. No DP 2.1 on that one right now. Yeah. All right, so let's go in and now go into the XG34. So this is an update. We haven't had an ROG update to an ultra wide in quite some time. So this one is actually going to be an update on that side. So this is actually pretty interesting in terms of this guy. So the XG34 WC, excuse me, WC DMTG. This is actually going to be our first display, which is actually going to be incorporating a couple of really cool pieces of text. So this is going to actually have Miracast and Chromecast built in with Android TV built into this unit, along with some other kind of cool technology. So it being inherently kind of an ultra wide, all of our current monitors already support picture in picture by picture by picture, right? So that's already cool. So you're going to get this, but some people even, I think, love having that functionality on an ultra wide, just because it's almost like having like two, monitors kind of side by side in that type of experience, right? But keep in mind, you can adjust the positioning for the picture in picture or picture by picture based input support. You'll also will have preloaded into this GeForce Now. So again, if you're somebody that wants to use this from the perspective of kind of like an all-in-one based device for like on any media-based processing, now you don't have to connect in another device. You'll actually have that functionality built in with Android 14. And again, the Google functionality all built in there. So that will be all kind of packed in. You'll have the auto KVM support on this. You'll have the USB power delivery, the neo proximity sensor, the unclamp controls, the aspect ratio controls. All of that will be baked in. So if you've been looking for an update on the ultra wide side from us, right now we already had quite a number of different options. We had a 34, we had a 39, and then we had a 49 inch. So those were all of our kind of ultra wide based options, but we hadn't updated that recently. So now this is our latest update, which we will have the XG34 WCMTG, which this will be a 3440 by 3440 by 1440, 240 hertz based option. And again, I think the big thing here is going to be the integration of the Google the Google TV and Android 14 functionality, along with that Miracast and that Chromecast support. And then also, like I said, from there, the picture in picture by picture by picture and the KVM functionality. So that is going to get you covered on that side. All right. So for those of you, how many of you guys are interested in that? Is that like a feature set that you find compelling or interesting that you want to see on more monitors? Would you want to continue to see having, let's say, wireless streaming support be baked in, or is that something that you don't find? What we're seeing is that there's more and more users that like kind of that flexibility to be able to have this type of functionality be introduced in the actual monitors. Oh, and sorry, I did note for that monitor also, we've gone ahead and updated that one. That one also is going to have, yes, it should actually be Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, because the speakers, normally when we do have monitors that have speakers, I would say that they're generally more base spec. So usually it's like a 1.5 or like a 2-watt base speaker design. These are actually going to be 5-watt base speakers. So they're actually notably improved, because again, with that more media-based focus, if you're somebody that kind of likes a little bit more of a casual kind of experience where you don't have to use headphones, you might appreciate having against the higher wattage based speakers, which are going to be good for, like I said, some casual gaming, podcasts, music playback, video watching, streaming services, things along those lines. So you will actually have both of those techs built into the unit. So again, 5-watt speakers with Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. And in terms of the question, is it going to be WOLED or matte or glossy? Actually, this is a QD OLED solution. So inherently, because it's QD OLED, that means it's going to be semi-glossy, right? So if you prefer kind of a little bit of that kind of sharper image, a little bit more contrasty image, then this is going to be favorable to you. But again, it being that QD OLED, you do have to consider, like I said, that some of that ambient light handling. So again, that's going to be a difference between, let's say, the WOLED 34-inch that we already have right now. We do have a WOLED unit, which has the AR matte coating, which that could be favorable. But the big difference, though, is that one has quite a bit more of an aggressive curvature. That's an 800R curvature, whereas this one won't. So keep in mind that there is a difference in that regard. Okay. Timothy goes, any chance of a 5K, 2K monitor? No commentary on that as of that right now. I don't have anything to confirm in terms of any type of product in that side. But as always, if we'll have something else, make sure if you're watching us here, or if you're, of course, part of the PCDIY community, you'll find out about those updates when we do have them available. All right. So I think that is all of the OLED-based updates. So let me go ahead and just round them out here with the VG series. So give me 1 second here. And I just want to bring up the VG monitors really quickly. So yeah, okay. Where's, yep. Oh, where did he go? There he goes. Okay. All right. So this is going to be part of an update into really the kind of more price aggressive segmentation of the market. So if you're somebody that's got a bit more limited budget and you're maybe still on a 1080p, maybe a much older 1440p, not really a high refresh rate option, and you want to go to a monitor that has much better color accuracy, much better refresh rate, lower input lag, right? You want new enhanced features like, let's say, being able to manage the OSD right from, like I said, from Windows. Maybe you want black frame insertion technology, or backlight strobing, right? There's a lot of really cool things. And so I'm really excited about this. The last time we had an update like this was, I would say, with the ROG Strix XG series, with monitors like the XG ACS and many of those other models that really kind of set a brand new kind of price to performance ratio. These are going to, I think, be very disruptive in terms of a price point. Now, we haven't finalized the pricing on these, but to give you kind of an analog, when we introduced the 1440p ACS, that came in at $299, and it set kind of a brand new benchmark. We're going to be very aggressively pricing these TUF Gaming units. And if you look at kind of the spec, these I think are going to be two fantastic specs for a lot of gamers that are looking to either adopt into PC gaming maybe for the first time, or maybe make a long-standing upgrade, but again, at a much lower price point. So don't expect here, like I said, high price points for these guys. These are going to be, I think, great, but you're not going to be compromising on really, I think, any of the key specs. So this is going to be a 1440p display. You can see really nice, low, tight response time. Now, keep in mind, these aren't going to be as low as like an OLED. OLED has the best-in-class, of course, pixel response time. But comparatively for LCDs, you would commonly see LCDs maybe trying to get down to that 1 millisecond. And here you do see 0.3, but in reality, you have to keep in mind that that's gray to gray, and there's actually panel variation across, where you're at in terms of the refresh rate and other things. To be frank and transparent, I would say here you're going to have very, very good LCD-based pixel response time. So in that regard, this is going to be amongst some of the best, with the exception of, like I said, our flagship like dual driver LCDs that have more advanced technology to keep even more consistent low pixel response time. This is about as good as you're going to get really in on LCD. So that's going to be great. 300 hertz, which is fantastic. Formal G-Sync compatibility, that 95% DCI-P3 coverage, the ALNB sync, which means that you get backlight strobing technology support. You also have great advanced variable overdrive tuning, the display widget center software, and then even assistive technologies that we have baked in. I think this is going to be a really great option for a lot of you guys out there that don't want to break the bank. I'm really a big fan of this monitor. Now, one thing I want to kind of show quickly here is going to be just kind of two things in terms of how we do a couple of elements on this LCD. One is going to be, we have the newer version of kind of our shadow boost technology, which helps to, like I said, be essentially not as aggressive as it was in the past. So we introduced this already on our ROG series monitors previously. And in the past, you could actually have an improvement in terms of the shadow detailing, but it would kind of like overexpose everything. So it would make everything that much brighter. But here you essentially have kind of like more of a dynamic level of shadow boost that's present, which means that we can see kind of a better level of gradation performance in one area than, let's say, affecting the totality of the entire area. So again, on an LCD, I think this can be advantageous, especially, like I said, in certain kind of competitive maps, certain types of competitive shooters. And this is going to be, like I said, the dynamic shadow boost, right, where we go from standard into that dynamic shadow boost, where we can have more targeted, like I said, improvements in terms of the shadow detail, right? Dynamic crosshair, if you want to find this in terms of kind of singular based training scenarios, this can be advantageous. And then gaming visual. Now, this is something that we've done in a lot of our monitors, and I talked a little bit about already, that you can match your monitors kind of applications or games to specific presets. But a really cool technology that we introduced with Display Widget Center is also AI Visual, which means that it will automatically look at the frame data on screen and make adjustments for you. So if you actually go to like an FPS game versus kind of going into a racing game, or if you went into like an action RPG, it could dynamically actually change the presets for you just by detecting what's on the screen. So even if you don't want to even kind of set up your own profiles, you could have it done automatically. But the really cool thing that I love is we're giving you the choice to do it either way. You can do it either automatically or you can do it manually. The choice is up to you. So those are kind of some of the cool supplemental features that, again, you're going to get on here. Even though this is going to be a really price aggressive display, you're going to get these type of features that are built in. One last one that I want to note is, I think within this price segmentation, there's a lot of people that might stack two monitors side by side. So one great thing that I've loved that we've now had for years that sometimes people don't realize is that we do actually have alignment options that are built into our OSD display as well. So if you actually want to be able to kind of align your monitors side by side and make sure that they're kind of paired up really nicely, we do actually have alignment bars that are available to you that you can use for that purpose. So just some of the cool stuff you'll see within this display that we have in terms of the TUF Gaming side. Okay. And we'll have one other update here, which is also going to be on the 34-inch. So if you want to go up into ultra wide as well, we will have another option for you right here. So let me bring this one up. This is going to be the 34-inch. So this will be the VG34WQML5A. So this one, again, going to be low response time, 250 hertz. Still very similar in terms of that 95% DCI-P3, higher than standard brightness, all the same gaming AI related features and the display widget control, as well as also having the backlight strobing technology as well. So all of that is going to be baked in there to give you a lot of great value propositions. So again, two really great options, one at the 1440p and then one at the 3440 by 1440. So two really nice options for those of you that might be on a more limited budget, but you still want to be able to upgrade your gaming monitor. Okay. Hey JJ, I'm on the XG27. Would you hit up a close upgrade to price performance, or what would you recommend? So that's actually a really great question. If we look at something like the XG is starting to kind of, I think, get kind of long in the tooth to kind of a degree if you talk about kind of the panel specifications on that monitor. So, but still it being an ROG monitor from that time is still quite solid. But if I remember right, the V, well, it depends on which V, because there's like a Q designation. There's like 27VQ. I don't know if you're at 1080p or if you're at the 1440p, but like if it's like the 27VQ, that was what, 1920 by 1080. 300 brightness, and then was like a 144 hertz. This would be like a massive upgrade because you would go to wide color gamut, lower pixel response time, right? An overall much higher refresh rate with better motion clarity, the backlight strobing technology, the display widget control software. And again, for the price point that you're going to be paying to get into that, I think that this would be a big overall kind of upgrade. But it would depend. I think I would 100% want to know what the exact model number it is, because this, sometimes people say that one, but they omit like the last one or two characters. That could change a little bit in terms of kind of which model you might have. But I think for a lot of people, that 27 that I noted would be a really big upgrade, especially, like I said, if you've got probably that 1440p that's from like 3 or 4 years ago, this could be a significant upgrade really across the board. Again, better color gamut performance. It's going to have lower pixel response time, better motion clarity, more rich features and functions that are going to be introduced there. And I think the cost to upgrade experience, because it's very aggressively priced, will make it really feel like you're going to be getting like a huge amount of bang for your buck, if that makes sense. I think the next step up would probably be something like that AQDMG glossy option on the OLED side. That would be kind of the strong contender to go, hey, maybe not super expensive, but if we talk about the projected price point, let's say we do release this monitor at $300, right? Even still, our cheapest OLED would still be more than twice as expensive. So you could literally get two of these LCDs for one of those OLED based panels, right? So that's where you really kind of have to start looking at is what is your kind of your end goal that you're looking at, right? Yep. All right. So let's keep rocking and rolling there from those displays. All right. So all right. We're gonna go into peripherals, guys. So let's go ahead and go into that. All right, so let's get into the peripheral side. If anybody, of course, still had questions on the monitors that I missed, you feel free to go ahead and drop them in there, and I'll do my best to go ahead and get into them when I can. All right, so we're going to go here with the ROG STRIX ACE. Excuse me, the ROG HARPE ACE. But our second generation. So let's go ahead and take a look at this guy. So this is going to be our new flagship ultralight gaming mouse, right? So this is going to be, of course, pretty much a semi-ambidextrous based model, right? There's still an affinity, right, for right-handed based users. But really the big updates here is there's a brand new actually MCU. So if you're not familiar with that, that's the actual chipset that's used inside here. It's going to allow for native 8K based support. In the prior generation, we already had models that supported 8K, but you had to use the polling rate booster. Here, there's no polling rate booster that's even required on that side. This also even has a lower level of latency performance to it compared to the prior generation, which was already industry leading, outstanding. We were already targeting sub 1 millisecond latency. Generally, our target goal was about 0.9 milliseconds. Here, this new MCU offers even better RF attenuation performance. So that means combating against kind of ambient kind of RF competing signals, maintaining outstanding battery life performance, right, along with sensor performance. Lighter weight, the prior generation, right, we had was already very light at 54 grams. Here we go down to 48 grams. We also revised the coating material here, so there's a little bit more tactility and softness, I think, to the actual coating. So if that's something that you favor, I think that is going to be something that you'll prefer and find. Also within this model, we still keep the RGB scroll wheel, which is nice. Most of these super ultra lightweight mice don't. Of course, you have USB-C connectivity with quick charging based support. Another really cool thing is going to be these models do support actually 3 levels of software control, essentially. So one is going to be with an Armory Crate. That's our normal utility. If you have a lot of ASUS components, you probably already have Armory Crate installed on your system. The second option is going to be something that we launched about now almost 2 years ago, which is called Armory Crate Gear, which is a lighter weight utility. And it's just focused at just peripherals. The only thing it does is just peripherals. But new for this mice, as well as for some of our new keyboards as well, is we have now what we call GearLink. GearLink is actually a a software-based free platform that pretty much just launches in your web browser. So you just connect, you go into the web browser, you put in the address, and it will connect directly to the device and allow you to make direct management control to the peripherals. So you essentially have those 3 options. You have AC, you have Armory Crate Gear, and then you have GearLink. Technically, if you wanted to count hardware-based control, we do also have hardware-based controls because you can store directly to the mouse, and you can actually use button combinations on the mouse to actually load things like DPI adjustments or change LOD or other parameters on there. And there's actually 5 different profiles that are available on there. So technically, if you really want to count, there's 4 different ways to be able to manage the unit. So this is going to be the ROG HARPE ACE II. I think a fantastic unit. Again, if you're looking for outstanding performance, right, really best in class in that regard, then this is going to be definitely a model to take a look at. We have it in white, we have it in black. We're going to be good to go. And this will also support our ROG Omni receiver technology. So with our latest generation keyboards, keep in mind that's going to be for the latest generation keyboards, you can use one dongle for one keyboard and one mouse unified experience, right? So that is also going to be a feature there. So that is going to be the ROG HARPE ACE II. Okay. All right. Let's go into the next guy, which is going to be the Falcata. Is ASUS considering micro LED panels for the future? Yes, we are still. We recently released late last year, we had an update to our ProArt line, which actually offered the best in class industry newest improvements to mini LED with the PA32 UCD XR, which was actually using a new micro LED based implementation with a new number of IC controllers. The IC controllers actually are critical to the performance of mini LED because they help to manage things like haloing and blooming and their overall kind of responsiveness. So the more number of IC controllers you can have, the more favorable the experience you tend to have for the mini LED implementation. And of course, with mini LED, you get outstanding efficiency along with even better SDR and better peak HDR brightness, right? So that is still a very exciting technology, and we're still continuing to look at. Right now, we don't have any immediate updates. I think right now there's still a lot of feedback from the community that they're most excited about OLED, but we are still continuing to evaluate and look at select opportunities where we think mini LED can offer an exciting, compelling experience. So that is still something that we're consistently evaluating as part of our product stack. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and go into the Falcata. Let me go ahead and go here, and we'll go into the Falcata. The Falcata, I think, is pretty interesting for you guys. I think probably most of you probably might have seen it as it kind of popped up in the early previews that we had there, right? So let me go ahead and bring up the images here. Okay, there we go. All right, so in terms of this guy, this is going to be, of course, our 75%, right, split keyboard-based design. So this is pretty cool, pretty interesting because it is a split keyboard. So right now it looks like pretty much a compact, like 70% keyboard, something like our ROG ASUS, right? But the cool thing that is going to differentiate it, see here, is of course you see there's a connecting cable. This actually will be tri-mode, so it'll be USB-C, Bluetooth, and 2.4 gigahertz, and it also utilizes that new MCU-based chipset for that ultra-low latency, that 8K support. Again, that's going to be on the master side. But where things start to get interesting is when we take a look at the split module-based implementation. So that's, of course, going to be here when, of course, you have the split module design. So within the split module design, there's some really cool things that we're doing. The first one is going to be you have this rapid trigger toggle. So this is already like what we did with our HFX ACE-based keyboard. So that means you can pretty much dynamically go from like daily driver normal mode to immediate kind of gaming mode. So normally with this having, of course, our latest generation V2 version of our Hall effect-based switches, which are actually even improved from the first generation switches, which we just introduced last year, right? These are even actually smoother, better, and overall even more performant. And those prior ones were already some of the best ones that you could really get on the market. The difference is that when you customize an actuation experience, that's not really good for daily driving. You don't want to be sitting there writing email or chatting to somebody on Discord or on Reddit with custom actuation, because it's going to be too inconsistent and it's going to be a really poor experience. So normally you would have to kind of go into software and change settings or load in a different profile, things along those lines. Now we make profile switching really easy. You can actually see that here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's actually multiple onboard praise profiles, so you could dynamically switch between, let's say, daily driving to this game, to this other game, to this other game. You could do that. But this hardware-based switch is a really quick way to go essentially from the rapid trigger to a non-rapid trigger based configuration. So literally just flip that and you can go to kind of daily driver mode, and then you could go to kind of gaming mode. You could also go ahead and make adjustments to the actuation experience on a purely hardware-based level without actually any software by using the actual integrated scroll wheel. But the scroll wheel can also be tuned to different types of adjustments. So if you want like volume adjustment, you can do that. Plus, there's also unique key bindings that you have available to you that you can also do that. You have an integrated silicone wrist rest right here that can actually be decoupled, so you can actually unscrew that. So if you don't want the silicone wrist rest, you're good to go. You also, on the underside, actually have threaded mounted feet that can be adjusted for different actually ergonomic setups. So if you want to be able to have a little bit more of a tilt or an incline or adjustment based on your tendency to have pronation or not have pronation, you can go ahead and make an adjustments to that. Overall, I think it's a really compelling based offering that, again, can kind of be tuned and tailored really, I think, for competitive players that really want a great experience and a great deal of flexibility to be able to kind of afford not only, I think, a more ergonomic based experience, but also a more compact and profile based experience. Do keep in mind that when you do set this up as well, you can just kind of use the master based unit as opposed to the master and the slave based unit configurations. So that's ultimately up to you in terms of how you want to be able to manage and complete the overall setup configuration. Let's see any feedback on here. Sean says, hey, this is pretty cool. Is there any update on the ROG Thor? I will be talking about the Thor in a little, almost at the very end of this, because the Thor is not new, although I'm going to be talking about the new white version of the Thor. But right now, we are expecting still a little bit of a delay in terms of the availability for the Thor 3 within the North American market. There's just a lot of current conditions right now that are affecting the rollout. So I think right now, at earliest, we'd probably be expecting I think, an early Q3 timeframe release for the Thor 3 based models. So as of right now, you will see the Strix Platinum models available, I think, before the Thor models. We have started to get ready to, I think, push those in terms of channel distribution. Keep in mind that the Strix Platinum, I think, is a great option unless you really want the OLED display that you get on the Thor. Those are going to be outstanding in terms of their power topology and their design. They're having the same actually cable quality. They're super low in terms of their acoustic performance because you have the larger heatsink assembly, and you also get the GPU voltage design that's exclusive to those ROG models. So only the Thor and the Strix Platinum actually have that GPU voltage stabilizer design. So unless you specifically want the Thor, the ROG Strix Platinums will be available before the Thor 3s within the North American region. Okay. So Sumin says, love this keyboard. When it will be released? We don't have a finalized price point, so just make sure to kind of keep it tuned in that regard. In terms of availability, I think we're hopefully going to have this before the end of Q2, possibly maybe going to the very beginning of Q3, but make sure to just keep it tuned for updates on that side. Okay. All right. Okay, so that is going to be the ROG Falcata. So from you guys, just overall, what did you think about that? Is that something that you guys find that's kind of interesting or compelling in terms of the overall design or that feature set? Or do you guys kind of appreciate the flexibility that's being afforded there? And what do you think about also is anybody right now, are you actually using a rapid trigger? Does anybody even have something like the Falcata Ace HFX, where we had that actually had Hall effect space switches? What we found from our perspective is that most users right now, because you can actually already have great latency and great actuation with a normal switch, where we worked really hard to make these really great quality switches within our ROG NX or ROG Snow or Storm switches. For a lot of users, I think that they find those already great experience. So it's really only when you start to get into, I think, a little bit more of a competitive player, somebody that might not be pro, but maybe they're competitively in, you know, ranked ladders, right? They're competitively kind of going day to day, and they want to have the best experience possible. Especially within the FPS segmentation, that's when they might be spending that effort to kind of go into the custom actuation. It's the reason why, as of right now, these are going to only be the two models that we offer that have essentially that. Where I think on the other side, we've already focused at giving you great latency, great actuation tuning with smooth, responsive switches that sound great, right? On so many of our other keyboards, that's where kind of the focus has been. But what are your guys' overall thoughts there on that side? He goes, I definitely want it. Okay, very, very cool. Zachary says he would prefer 100%. That's interesting. I think, you know, the reality is what we kind of look at is that the biggest value here would really be, I think, more towards users that are prioritizing a compact-based profiling because they're using this as a competitive kind of gameplay advantage. Although definitely you could argue that ergonomics should be favorable for everybody, right? So if you talk about just a split keyboard design, it would be beneficial for anybody, including somebody on 100%. But in that regard, also, you know, we do have models like the Claymore, which has a detachable keyboard, which gives you that already kind of great experience, but within being able to have a more compact keyboard. But then if you need the 10 key, you can just add the 10 key, or the Scope 296, which I still love because it's a compressed, essentially almost 100% size, but almost like in a 75% form factor. So I still get my arrow keys, I still get the numpad experience, I still get great quality switches, tri-mode connectivity, low latency. I get like everything on that. So if you haven't checked out the Scope 296, I think the Scope 296 would be a great model to take a look at. Okay. All right. So peripherals, the Falcata, the Harpe Ace. Okay, Sheath 2. So let's touch on this one. So this one is pretty cool. Just this one's a really small update. So we actually have quite a bit of large desk mats right now. So we have the Scabbard 2. We have, of course, the Hone XL as well. And now we're going to have the Sheath. And they all have different types of material compositions. So I think the main thing is, well, why did we decide to do another if we already have a couple of essentially large desk mats? And the main thing that we really kind of had feedback from the community on why we decided to introduce another option is some people just have variability in terms of kind of the temperature experience, especially I think over an extended period of time. So what we're doing here with the ROG Sheath 2 is that there's actually a new type of textile material here, which does a really great job at thermal dissipation and how it actually absorbs kind of heat. So with the traditional textiles, you get more kind of a thermal buildup over time. There's a little bit kind of a heat soak that presents itself, and it doesn't necessarily dissipate as quickly. So when we compare this to, let's say, other kind of standard non-cooling based desk mats, you're going to find, I think, somewhere almost about a 5-degree difference. Now, we are finalizing the testing and the validation data, but this is notably kind of cooler to the touch, especially over an extended period of time. So if you're somebody that finds that you're maybe in a warmer or hotter ambient environment, or maybe your hands kind of inherently are kind of a bit warmer, you kind of really keep them on that space, and you want to be able to have like a cooler experience in that regard, this might be something that you really favor. If you're fine, then, you know, definitely take a look, I'd say, at the Hone XL or the Scabbard 2. Those also offer some really cool design benefits, like the oleophobic nano coating that we put on there, which makes it resistant to things, you know, like grime or oils or water or different kind of materials. So we have a lot of different surfaces for different people, but this will be the Sheath 2 XL. So I think a pretty nice option. And again, for the people that are running maybe on the hotter side of the fence, this might be something you guys might find compelling. Okay, so that is going to be the Sheath 2 XL. All right, we're gonna quickly bang these guys out here in terms of just some networking updates, guys. Or actually, I'll give you guys a choice. Do we want to touch on some of the networking updates or chassis updates? Chassis updates or networking? There's some cool stuff on the chassis side, so I'm going to give you guys the choice. Do we go with chassis or do we go with networking? I think we're going to get chassis, but we're going to see. So I'll give a 5-second vote. So Go to Truth says, my Claymore has been great, mostly used without the numpad, but it's nice to have the option. I agree. Like one of my systems, I still have daily driver there. I mean, I've got Azoth Extreme, Azoth, Scope 296. I've got quite a number of different options, but I still love that flexibility that the Claymore gives, right? You know, if anything, I'd love to see maybe another updated Claymore in terms of the design, right? Okay, so chassis, both, and it looks like cases, right? Okay, so hey, Pidgey PCs, man, happy to have you here. Okay, so we're gonna go with chassis. Oh, Sean, and Sean gets a little applaud right there for giving us some love on the networking side. But let's go ahead and go with the chassis. So I think the first one that I'm gonna give with you guys is let's go with a little bit of a teaser. Okay, so this was not actually formally announced at Computex, but I wanted to go ahead and highlight it. So let me go ahead and talk about this guy. So this is going to be a chassis update. So let me go ahead and bring this one up here. And the first one is going to be the Prime AP202 Micro ATX chassis. So this is going to be a new chassis coming out from us in the not too distant future. So this is going to be within the Prime series lineup. So it features a kind of a refined and kind of very minimal design language to it, which I think works for a lot of different builders. Some of the cool things that you're going to see here, this should be actually the first chassis that's actually going to be using a tempered curved glass panel. So most of the actual curved glass you see is actually not tempered. The main differential is that if you were to actually accidentally drop this, or if you look, you know, in forum threads, you know, in Reddit, you'll see that when sometimes these things drop, they can smash into a huge number of pieces. And of course, tempering not only makes it more resilient and stronger, but if it was to potentially fall, it's far safer, right? Because it's essentially going to kind of be more fractured than necessarily would fall into all of these kind of different types of pieces. So this actually took a lot of actually factory validation work and actually kind of testing to be able to do what we've done here. But some of the really cool design elements is there's actually a guided frame design. So when you actually pull this out, there's actually a frame that allows us to kind of hold on to it. So it actually will pull out on the frame, and then you can pull out the entirety. So you don't kind of have to have this like weird kind of just like, oh, I immediately kind of pull off and potentially drop it. So there's actually a frame that helps to guide you inserting it and removing it. We also have this patented design that we have for our kind of airflow design, which we've actually tested with a very high-end configuration. Our internal test when we first started the development on this was using a 14900K at full power limits along with a 4090 base GPU. And what we found is with this type of airflow design, we were able to reduce the temperatures by more than about 8 degrees. So it's a noticeable improvement, but it also adds an interesting visual characteristic where with the RGB illumination, you have kind of this cool undertone lip that's present there that looks pretty cool. In terms of flexibility, this will really give you a lot of options, right? You can fit a large 360 millimeter AIO. You're going to also have, of course, support for the largest base graphics cards, including like our ROG STRIX or Astro series based cards, mini or My2X based motherboards. We will most likely be bringing in both versions. We'll have a version that is called the Plus version, which will have 3 pre-installed ARGB fans, and then the standard version, which you see here in the white or the black, which won't actually have the pre-installed fans. So just a little bit of a teaser. What do you guys think? Do you guys like the ID design? Do you guys like this concept? And I'll give you a little bit of another teaser is that we will have a big brother to this for the ATX side. So while we already right now have 2 great options from a panoramic base chassis with the GT502 Horizon, and then also with the A31, which is a compact non-dual chamber design, which I really love. We're also going to be offering another updated model with the AP304. So make sure to keep tuned to be able to see that model. It's got a really interesting design aesthetic that I think you guys are going to dig. Okay. Let's see some of the feedback right here that we have right here. So Michael says, I love the AP202 design, the glass and the space under the light, separated air intake. Yeah, it's pretty cool. HO Computers gives us, it's a neat one. Michael notes, yeah, I like the design, right? Pasquit says, I really like it. Very cool, right? And PGPC says, case looks amazing. Really cool. Man, thanks for the positive feedback, guys. I think the team has done a really great job with this chassis, and I'm very excited about letting you guys see it in the not too distant future. So I think it'll be a pretty cool update that we have in that regard. Okay, so let's go to also another little bit of an Easter egg and a little bit teaser. And again, credit to Justin Chu for helping me out here and getting a little bit of these early previews. Now, we did not release an actual press release for this chassis, but we showing it off kind of in a little bit of a subdued way there at Computex in one of our demo systems setups. So this is actually going to be the GX601. So for many of you might be aware that the first actual chassis that we had under the ROG lineup was the Helios. This is kind of an updated version of the ROG Helios. So you'll see one of the first big kind of differences within there is there's no more large kind of tempered glass in the front. Now, the reality is some people might have thought that this limited really kind of the overall performance. For Helios owners, you will have many of them in the community. You'll find that they had very high-end builds, and this is not an issue because most users would actually be putting the AIO solution at the top of the chassis, not at the front. So there was more of an aesthetic focus in the design. But I think with users really looking to try to say that they want to prioritize, quote unquote, even the perception of kind of a thermal performance characteristic, this is where we've made one of the biggest departures, where in the prior generation you had the full glass facade in the front, to now we of course go to a vented based design there on the unit. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are. I still think the ID design is really cool. I like it. I like that it has a stylized design element to it that still feels a little bit unique. Not just kind of some generalized slats, right, that you would have in there. So it does have a little bit of unique kind of intelligibility. I still like the strap designs that we had on there, that we had on the original Helios as well. But it definitely does bring a little bit of a different vibe to the visual presentation than we had with the original Helios. Going in a little bit more, we can kind of see some cool kind of reflection design elements that you can see also carried through on some of the newer ROG products, like we see with the Astral series, which keep this same kind of reflected kind of elements that, again, when they're not kind of contrasted with certain light patterns, they'll just look kind of clean and really nice and silver. But when they do add a little bit of that kind of light in play, I think it gives it kind of a cool little bit of bounce to it. And it just gives you a little bit of a different kind of feel to it, right? Which is pretty cool. Here's another shot where you can, of course, see on the back where we've got a nice kind of panel-based design, which gives you some visibility, but at the same kind of hides everything off. So again, if you're not somebody that's super focused on having the strongest kind of cable management, it's not something you super have to kind of be worried about. It's still going to be quite nice in that regard. I still also love that we still have these little angles in play for the Helios, which I think look quite nice in terms of their design. It gives it some nice distinction, and still also kind of helps it to kind of throw back to the original design language that we had with the original Helios, right? And I think I've got one other image here for this one. Give me 1 second. I think on the inside, I think I have one other one. Give me 1 moment here. Let me bring it up here, guys. Sorry about that. Where did it go? I thought I'd save that one. Okay, here we go. Here we go. It's fine. I'll show you guys in our group space, because I just posted this one as a little bit of an teaser. So here we can see a little bit of an inside view there, and also looking great with the white ROG Astral, which is going to be coming up. And then there's a little another teaser for you is the upcoming ROG RYOU 4, which is going to be our BTF optimized cooler, in also white. So here you can kind of see the all the white synergy going on, right? White motherboard, white Astral, white cooler, of course, white chassis, and then even, of course, white power supply. You might want to really show off, of course, that here, this is just like the original one, where you also have an opportunity to put in the Helios, which the Helios has, of course, the display in there. So it looks nice in that regard. So there you can see here from our friends over at Peachy Tech, you can also see kind of how like the Thor 3 in white, also that's a little bit of a teaser for you, is the Thor 3 looking really nice in white there. So that's kind of an updated little design look at what we have with the upcoming GX601 in white. And a little bit of teaser for you guys that like the big chassis, we will also have a GR801. There's no name for it yet, but if you want ROG panoramic chassis, it's coming. That's all I'm going to tell you. It's coming. It's going to be cool. I think you guys are going to dig it. It's going to look really interesting. And that's all I'm going to tell you. So you're just going to have to stay tuned to the PC DIY community to find out more about that chassis. All right. But what do you guys think about the new GX601? All right. And go here. Let me see. Any thoughts? So I got the white Helios and the Hyperion. I love them both, man. Thanks for being such a supporter for ROG. Pretty cool. Nice to know there. Oh, actually, using the original Claymore. Not familiar with the Claymore 2. Yeah, the Claymore 2 is a big improvement compared to the first generation, pretty much in every way. I mean, it has much better switches. There actually are RX-based switches, which have really nice keycap stability. It also had PBT switches. It had, you know, wired and wireless-based connectivity, much longer battery life. So, yeah, the Claymore 2 is a massive upgrade compared to the original Claymore. But the original Claymore was quite nice. I really also like that kind of top metal with the etching that we did with the Meyer patterning finish that was present on there. But yeah, it's a big difference, the Claymore 2 compared to the Claymore 1 in that regard, right? So Michael says the previous version was a great case. The revamp is nice. Okay, pretty cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for that feedback on there. And thank you guys for giving us a little bit of feedback on that side. So we will go ahead and continue on that end. So that's going to be our 2 updates there on the chassis side. So let's go ahead and go into cooling. So I think on the cooling, I won't kind of touch on this too much because I think for probably most of you, you've already seen it. So I'm just going to touch very lightly on the RYOU 4. And I think I already showed you guys, we showed off the RYOU 4 in white. So of course, this is our upcoming large base display. So 6.67 inch base 2K AMOLED based display on there. It'll have daisy chain magnetic fans with great, of course, static pressure and airflow on them. So you're going to be all good to go. So this guy is going to be coming in the not too distant future. I do have an update as of right now. I think we're probably going to be expecting this in Q3, not in Q2. So there is a revised timeline that we're going to have in this card. And on the white model, I think the white model will also still be coming after the black model. So if you've been waiting on this guy, there is going to still be just a little bit more wait for you guys. I appreciate you guys kind of waiting with us, but again, there's just a lot of kind of things that are happening right now. So just keep that in mind, is that we'll be probably looking, I think, closer at kind of that Q3 timeframe for the RYOU 4. But we are happy to be able to let you know it will be coming. And again, we're also going to have a white variant for this model. And I believe somebody earlier also asked, like I said, is it going to be available in white or in black? It's now going to be available in white and black, but only in a 360 millimeter. It's not going to be offered in a 240 millimeter base variant. All right, so that is going to be the RYOU 4. Now, in addition to that, I do want to also go ahead and show you that I've got actually a couple of other cool new coolers here, which are going to be under the TUF Gaming series, which is going to be our new TUF Gaming LC3. So let me go ahead and bring these ones up. Give me 1 second here. Where did it go? Okay. Okay, here we go. Yep. All right. So for the TUF Gaming LC series, these are going to be a brand new updated units, which I think the really cool thing that I love about these guys is we are going to have both white and we are also going to have black base models. The cool thing in this regard, as far as the white and the black base models, is that we're going to have an LCD version and we're going to have a non-LCD base version. And one of the other cool things that you're going to have within these units is that from, I would say, like a price to performance standpoint, generally you don't have that many units more in the entry side of the market or the mid-range side of the market that actually have screens. You generally find screens that are going to be in the higher end of the AIO marketplace. So for these units, they are actually having a really nice IPS-based display in these units, I think is actually going to be pretty cool within this kind of segmentation within the marketplace. So I'm pretty happy to be able to see that we're going to be offering that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the new overall ID design. I really like this ID design. I think it looks really nice with kind of this little bit of geometry that's added into the kind of the compact head. There's some really cool things that we've done here also, I think, to streamline the user experience. So we introduced recently our Prime LC series, which again also introduced a screen at a very much lower price point for us. The other cool thing is that compared to, let's say, the higher models that had daisy chain magnetic fans, those are more premium fans to integrate, but they offer a really streamlined experience. So if you don't have the budget to step up to that, these units will actually have an integrated fan frame design, which makes the installation experience really, really simple. So when you mount this in, you don't pretty much have to have all these additional fans that you got to manage independently. They're in that unified fan frame, which makes the installation experience really streamlined. and just helps to make it, you know, a simpler, faster, and easier experience for a lot of builders. So especially if you're looking for kind of an easy streamline upgrade where you still get great thermal performance, a really nice aesthetic, again, available in white or black, these might be a really great option for you when we do end up bringing these units to market. So bringing in kind of some of the, I guess, the key kind of design elements or spec, there are some cool things that we are going to be doing here. Along with the RYOU 4, one of the big updates you're going to be getting is that these will be updated to have our what we call new info hub system, which will have a lot of robust functionality in terms of what you can do to display and leverage in that big display. So on the display side too, a lot of the more entry units on the market are pretty small. If they do have this is going to be quite large. You can see it's a full color 2.9 display that's going to be on there. And then again, you're going to have that integrated fan frame. Tubing length is quite nice, and also the warranty is going to be the same as all of our units, 6 years. Sometimes for some of the other models that are a little bit more entry in the market, they might only have like a 3-year or 4-year warranty. So 6 years is pretty much what we're seeing across the board from us on that side, which is quite nice in terms of the warranty coverage. Pump speed is also quite good on this. It's going up to 2,800 RPM. Radiator is only 27 millimeters, so it's nice to still be able to give you good thermal dissipation, but not be so large that it'll kind of like really obstruct your ability to mount in to a more varied set of kind of chassis configurations. And the fan performance is quite nice compared to more kind of sometimes entry units, which go up to maybe about like 1,800, 2,000, maybe 2,200 RPM. You're going to have 650 all the way up to 2,600 RPM in terms of the fans. And static pressure performance is quite good at up to 3.82 and about like 90 CFM. Now keep in mind, max performance for fans is always at 100%. The reality is most people don't run at 100%. They're probably running somewhere between like 1,400 to 1,800 RPM. So that's where you really care about kind of a fan's performance is going to, I'd say, be like in the middle of the fan curve. And in that regard, I think you've got a performant enough fan to give you a great experience without being loud, which I think and sometimes is actually maybe more important than anything else. But here you can see some of the kind of the cool core spec that we have there, right? Again, 650 to 2,600 RPM. You got your airflow, your static pressure, your no space profile, and an optimized 9-blaze geometry and 4-pole design. So overall, I think a really solid foundation here. We don't have finalized MSRP or pricing, so you'll have to kind of keep tuned for that regard. But the last thing here I wanted to kind of show is going to be a little bit of information on the new Info Hub software that we're going to be having here for our AIOs. So again, these are going to be launching with the RYOU 4, but you'll have a lot of options to be able to go in and kind of granularly put in a lot of different kind of metrics and points and be able to do a lot of customization parameters. So I think this will be a great update that we're going to be offering in to just even give you more flexibility and control to be able to present the information that you want, whether it's going to be personalized to GIFs or animations, or again, if you want to kind of go more on the stat heavy side of the fence, all those would be available to you. So that is going to be the TUF Gaming LC3 series. And again, we will have those in white and we will have those in black. So you're going to be covered on both sides of the fence. Okay. And I think that should be it on that side. Let me go ahead and check if there's anything else for you guys there. Let's see. I don't think I showed the white model. I think that's okay. Let me go ahead and quickly just see any quick questions there. HO Computer says, I love the design on the TUF AIOs. Is the RYOU 4 LCO going to be offered in non-BTF form? Yes, we will. We don't have the delivery schedule for it, but there is a planned essentially version that will have longer tubing lengths, right? So the first version will be kind of the BTF optimized version, which will be the short tubing length, right? Which is going to be more ideally suited, right, for those really nice minimal kind of design setups, right? But if you want to be able to have the longer tube hose, we are evaluating that option and it will be coming later. But I think right now, there's probably not going to be any update, I'd say, for the foreseeable future. So I wouldn't expect a clear update on that until probably maybe the end of Q3 timeframe for, let's say, the non-LC version of the RYOU 4. But there is essentially already kind of a design validation model that we've already been working on. Okay. Let me go ahead and see. As R4, I'll take 2 in white and black, please. All right. Anything else? All right. Okay. Very, very cool, guys. All right. Hey, how you doing, man? Fantastic. Thanks for joining in the stream here. All right. So I think we're pretty much almost at the end here, guys. I think we just got a last couple items. Let's see. Chassis, coolers. Where were we at here? Okay. So, okay. I know. I got one for you guys here. So this is, if you guys are part of the PC DIY group, you might have already seen this little bit of a teaser, but I'm going to go ahead and show it to you guys here. So give me 1 second. For those that aren't part of our community, here is a little bit of a teaser for you guys. So let me go ahead and show this one off and bring this up here. So give me 1 second. We're going to show our upcoming ProArt fans. So we've been actually working on brand new ultra high performance ProArt based fans. So the goal really with these is to really be able to offer kind of best in class 120 millimeter performance, which that's tough because there's some very, very good options that are on the marketplace right now. We have been working on these guys for quite some time. And this is not going to be RGB. This is all about performance right here. So let's go ahead and take a look here at the ProArt based fans. So there you go. That's going to be the ProArt PP120. So what are you going to have that's kind of really cool and compelling that's going to be on these nice models? Well, of course, this is going to be liquid crystal polymer, 0.5 millimeter in terms of the actual, excuse me, the depth in terms of course, the radius, right, to the actual edge, right? So maximize overall its static pressure performance and its airflow performance. And I think that's where we really get compelling. If you actually take a look at the initial performance values, which we've already tested for, really outstanding. So this is going to be up to a 3,000 RPM based fan. And again, most people are not going to run it at 3,000 RPM. But if you look at these numbers, they are really class leading. We actually right now have already benchmarked this as be out in front of the kind of real two leaders in the marketplace, right? One would be from Lamley and the other one would be from Fantex. So we can see right here, 7.62 and then over 112 in terms of the CFM. But I think if you look at the actual two targets, which are going to probably be more realistic and kind of in that range of between the 1400 to, like I say, 1800 RPM, which I think is what most users generally going to be tuning in around at. Again, very, very impressive performance in terms of the static pressure and the airflow. So some of the other kind of key things here is you're going to have a metal bearing shell, right? 28 millimeters thick, the liquid crystal polymer. We're going to offer these in also white and we're going to also them in black. But I really love the main feature that I think I'm most excited about on these is there's actually a really cool installation experience improvement that we've made on these. So while these are traditional based fans, right? We've simplified the experience in offering kind of a daisy chain kind of magnetic design. So you actually see that there's actually a connection mechanism where you can actually connect all the fans together and then use one standard connection end, right? So kind of like what we have with our daisy chain magnetic fans, where you can put them together and then you would have one cable that would manage the ARGB and the fan signal, right? There's essentially two connections coming from that one cable connection that would route over on the fan. You have kind of a similar setup experience. So again, if you want to set these up multiple in a configuration, you can really streamline on the number of cables you have to manage, connect them all together for really nice tight grouping configurations, but while also having outstanding performance. And I think the ID design looks fantastic. I love these really nice details that we have over here, even like the ProArt monogram that we've actually put into the fans. So I think pretty cool. So that is going to be a little bit of a teaser for the upcoming PP120s. These actually hopefully should be hitting us before the end of Q2 timeframe. So they should be coming in the not too distant future. So, so let's go ahead and see right here. Any feedback on that side? H2O Computer says, these look hefty. Yeah, these are definitely going to be, you know, thick, very performant-based fans, again, with that metal bearing shell-based design. Of course, the liquid crystal polymer, you're going to feel that, right? You're going to feel that these are not kind of lightweight fans. They definitely do have some heft to them. I wouldn't say as kind of heavy as something like the Apex metal-based fans, but definitely here in terms of performance, they're very, very nice, right? Yep. And then we have, hey, I'm a fan of it, right? Okay. I like that, right? When you see any Cam 2 motherboards, you know, I don't know if I have the preview image right here. I could show you actually one of the concept boards that we did where we had Z890 on Cam 2. But the reality is, we are continually co-working with actually memory partners on Cam 2 validation on motherboards, but there isn't necessarily an immediate requirement. And I think part of that is because when you already look at CU DIMMs are already offering kind of top level of DRAM scaling. And even without CU DIMMs, if you take a look at the DRAM topology enhancements and the memory controller technology that we've been able to showcase with a 2DIMM based motherboards like what we do on the Apex series, again, we've already broken the record multiple times, right? We've gone from 9,000 MT to 10,000 to 11,000 to 12,000 to almost 13,000. We literally are almost at 13,000 without even utilizing CAM. And if you want to talk about being able to maximize OC scaling range, in for the majority of users, without even going into the extreme segmentation, if you even look at updates where we've enabled CUDIM support for AMD and for Intel, where you can routinely now be able to exercise 8,000 MT for the vast majority of CPU configurations. The requirement to go to CAM2, which adds some additional design complexity, and you also have to have some design considerations for the user in terms of how they install it. You don't have to manage that. Like, right, you can still use traditional DIMMs. You have overall better thermal dissipation characteristics. You have the RGB lighting, which for some users, they really love that aesthetic elements, right, that they can have there. And again, we can offer outstanding DRAM frequency scaling. So we're continuing to look, I think, at CAM2 for where it might make sense in different kind of market options, but we have no immediate models that we're going to be bringing to market. And I would say for people that care about performance, CUDIMs is right now is the way to go, right? And you can now actively buy CUDIMs on the market with actually a good amount of choice, and it will continue to even get stronger as we get into the kind of Q3 and Q4. You're going to probably see CUDIMs from almost all of the leading memory manufacturers at least having a couple of CUDIM offerings for people that really want to focus on frequency and density, right? Yeah. All right. Let me go ahead and see right there. Okay. Yep. All right. Nope. No problems on that. So let's go ahead and continue there. Sorry if I missed anybody else's question here, because we got some power supplies. The main one that I kind of just really wanted to touch on is, I talked about it a little bit. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I just want to give you guys here a little bit of preview of the Thor 3. I already gave a recap about this earlier. So just to kind of round out for everybody again, we do expect the Thor 3s to be, I think, again, pushed out a little bit, probably not until now Q3 timeframe. I think probably maybe August timeframe is probably where we're going to be looking at. The Strix Platinum series, I do think that we're going to have before the end of Q2. You might even maybe see them by next month in terms of the Strix Platinum. Keep in mind that the Strix Platinum series are going to be very similar to what you're going to get with the Thor 3, with I'd say the main differentiator being that, of course, the Thor 3 has the swappable magnetic display, right? If you really want the display, then you're going to want to go with the Thor 3. But if you're just prioritizing overall build quality, the quality of the cables, the GPU voltage stabilizer design, the bigger heatsink assemblies, all of those elements, you're going to get that on the Strix Platinum model. So I would say the Strix Platinum for a lot of people is going to be the compelling option. We also will offer a white variant within the Strix Platinum. So you can get the Strix Platinum in white, you can get it in black. Here I'm also showing you the Thor 3 that we will also have in white, which I think will be great. And again, if you guys don't know what I mean by the voltage stabilizer design, that's actually this little guy right here, which is an exclusive design implementation just on ASUS ROG power supplies. It's actually a patented design that we have right now. So it's exclusive, again, to the ROG Strix Platinum and to the Thor 3 series. So the long and short of it essentially is that when your power supply is operating traditionally, it's kind of a unified kind of sensing mechanism that's at play. So the GPU load, the graphics card, the GPU, the CPU, it's all coming in. Here, what we have is essentially a dedicated sensing pins just for the GPU. So what it allows to do is that the PSU can be quicker to respond to what's called the transient response for just the GPU. So when the GPU is kind of shifting from, let's say, an idle or from a 2D state to a heavy 3D state, the PSU is quicker to be able to ensure essentially a faster level of kind of switching performance to be able to provide the power to the graphics card. So you might go, well, if right now you're not seeing graphics cards just fail, what is the inherent benefit of that? Essentially, being able to provide that quicker level of transience helps to stabilize the performance and actually potentially improve the performance, because that power delivery variance can actually affect some of the boosting behavior of GPU boost's architecture. So when you're able to actually improve upon this, it's similar kind of like power delivery benefit between a little bit of a board that might have good power delivery to a board that has amazing power delivery. They both can offer stable and reliable operation even when overclocked, but what you might notice is then that higher VRM spec model, it maybe gets a little bit better clock stability or a little bit better clock ramping, right? By maybe an extra like 100 megahertz, right? And so that's what you actually will kind of see is you'll see it's not massive. In our testing, it can vary in terms of a couple percent, but this is still enough to actually affect a few FPS. And again, if you're kind of at the forefront that you want the absolute best performance possible, along with the great aesthetic, outstanding build quality, ultra quiet operation, great quality cables, all of these things, these are all premium points that you're going to get within the ROG power supply. So it's just this way of kind of evolving and kind of improving the performance to just another degree, right? So that is what the GPU voltage stabilizer design does, is essentially just help to make sure that the PSU is the most responsive it can be to what is essentially generally driving the most power draw within the system, which is going to be the GPU. Now, on the graphics card side, there's no change for you to make. the cable that will connect, so your 12-volt 2x6 power connector is exactly identical. It looks exactly the same when you're plugging it into the graphics card. But on the power supply side, you're going to be connecting this one, the 12-volt by 6, the 12-volt 2x6, but you're also going to connect this sensing pin. So you do use the cable that's included inside the box, you're going to be good to go. But on the other end, it will look exactly the same like any standard 12-volt 2x6 base power cable design. And again, that is going to be present on both the Thor 3. Doesn't matter which Thor 3 you're talking about. Again, Thor 3 will be available in a 1000 watt, 1200 watt. Again, 1200 watt you can see here is one white and one in black, and then the 1600 watt. And then the Strix Platinums. Strix Platinum, I believe we're not doing the 850, so the Strix Platinums I think should just be the 1000 watt and the 1200 watt. And let me go ahead and check any questions on that side. Stardust says the white looks great. Thank you guys so much. Let me see right here. A couple of questions. Does the voltage regularly work on non-ASUS GPUs? Yes. So that design does not matter. You can use any manufacturer's graphics card. I'd love to see you kind of pair it with a Prime graphics card or a TUF Gaming graphics card or an ROG Astral or a ProArt. It doesn't matter. You could use it on any graphics card. But even if you were to use it on an older graphics card or a competitor's graphics card, it will still work. So the GPU voltage stabilizer design is not conditionally specific to being used with an ASUS graphics card. We designed the power supplies to be outstanding power supplies by themselves. So you will get this benefit regardless of what GPU you're going to be using with, as long as those GPUs are essentially using that 12-volt high power connector, right? The 2x6 power connector design. Okay. Pricing, we don't have finalized MSRP for you on that side. So until we actually release the finalized pricing for that, which again, we will do that in the PC DIY community. That will be the first place that the pricing gets actually posted in terms of our new product introduction posts. But hopefully, like I said, I think within the next week or so, you should probably see those getting ready to go up in that regard. Okay. Let me go ahead and see here. Actually, hold on. Wait, you know what? I might have actually the pricing for the Strix Platinum, not the Thor, but for the Platinum. I might actually already have the Platinum. Okay, so I can confirm for the 1200 watt Platinum, that one should be right now $255. And then for the 1000 watt, $230. I don't have the white pricing yet, but the white pricing should be, I think, feature parity. It shouldn't be, I don't believe the pricing will be different, but please in mind, just wait for formalized pricing confirmation. But yeah, pricing confirmation for the 1000 watt is $230. And then for the 1200 watt is $255. Okay. I'm still using the original 1200 watt Thor with a 4090 7800 CD. It seems to work as good as the day I got it. No, I think you're entirely fine. Plus, also on that model, you could get, of course, an aftermarket replacement cable from like Cable Mods or something like that if you want to run from the fully modular connector. The main difference, really, that model is a pre-ATX 3.0, 3.1, but it was built to a very high standard, right? It has outstanding power topology. Very efficient, has those big heat sinks in there. So it's going to be really stable, really reliable. I would say you have no immediate reason. The biggest difference inherently really to the 3.0 models is, of course, they all come natively with the native 2x6 connector on them. And then also as part of the specs, the excursion demand is defined into that spec. So there's essentially kind of like a transient demand that happens in power supplies, where prior to the ATX 3.1 specification, the vendors kind of had to design some type of headroom, but that headroom wasn't necessarily consistent across the industry. So what they did when they implemented the 3.1 design is that essentially it formalized kind of a standard that everybody says, hey, you now have to have double the excursion output, because if the GPUs might kind of peak up in this kind of micro instance, right, in terms of their power excursion, then the power supply should be guaranteed to operate within that threshold. So there's, I'd say, more consistency across power supplies within the newer spec. In the older spec, if you were buying a very good quality power supply, there's already a high level of excursion performance built in, along with really good, OVP and OCP circuitry and stuff like that. So again, if everything's working great for you, you have no reason to kind of go like just change the power supply for no reason. You're entirely okay. Yeah. I won't talk about any potential next generation panels if you're asking me about that. So yeah. Okay. Extreme. Hey, Beatbox. Yeah. So I mean, I think our perspective when we design products like an Extreme motherboard or an Apex, right? These are ultra premium enthusiast products. They're not designed for every user in the market, right? Not every user is going to need something like a specialized dim.2 design. But for me, like I'm a water cooling enthusiast, right? So I know that when I build like a hardline boot system, if I wanted to simply be able to just add an M.2 SSD, but I have a hardline loop for my CPU and my GPU, literally on a normal motherboard that doesn't have something like a dim.2 design, like on an Apex or Extreme, means that I would have to drain my whole loop. I'd have to remove my hardline tubes, then take out the GPU to then access the M.2 slot on a motherboard, do all the mounting in, and then literally put that all back together, replumb my loop, and then do that. That's a huge amount of work and effort, which is literally hours of work to do for something as simple as that. Whereas if I had my dim.2 design on something like an Extreme board, I could literally take this out of the box, put my M.2, slide it into a slot, and in 10 minutes, I'm done, right? It could even be less than 10 minutes. That has value. Or something like the true independent dual BIOS design, or even the aesthetic elements. Does everybody need a 5-inch display on a motherboard? No, but there's some people that appreciate that. So from our perspective, we design based, I think, on the want and need, what we see within the enthusiast community. I think for a lot of people, the TUF Gaming X870 motherboards that we're going to have are going to be a fantastic option for them. They're going to be stable, reliable, great I/O, great feature set, functionality. There's a lot of really good stuff there. So they don't need to go to an Extreme, or they don't even need to go to a Hero. But we design product based again on the demand and the want, right? So as long as we see that there's a community that appreciates those features, those functions and designs, then we're going to be offering those items. And I think the critical thing to also consider when we offer a higher tier product is those products benefit even users at the lower price bands. The reality is almost every premium feature that you see on a motherboard started on ROG. And this even traces into other products, like on our graphics card designs. Maybe where literally the first graphics card that ever had an active fan cooling design was an ASUS graphics card. There's other stuff like the 0 dB technology, which now is industry wide, was first pioneered on an ASUS ROG based graphics card, and it's now become prevalent in the industry. There's many of those things like on the motherboard side that now even on competitors' products, if you buy a more entry level product, it was started first and foremost on ROG by pioneering innovations that we have put forth that add value and improve the experience. And so I think when we put products like that to the market, they do carry a higher cost, but they reward the users by giving them the best features and functions that we can put out there. And then over time, we also see those scale out to other products, even at lower price points, which I think is advantageous. And I think that's the way that it should work, because that ultimately gives the users benefit over time, right? Is that we have really cool technologies that we can put in that might be more expensive, more complicated, more production heavy to be able to implement, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do them, right? These things can be really cool. And then over time, we can standardize and we can figure alternatives to bring the cost down to be able to offer these type of functions or features, right? Again, even something as simple as an integrated IO shield that started on the Extreme series on ROG motherboards. And I remember that time, that Extreme model launched at, I think, at almost an unprecedented price of, at that time it was like, I think like $699 or something like that. But we were offering stuff like that, and now you can buy B series based motherboards with integrated IO shields, but we had to start somewhere, right? So I don't know if that gives you maybe some context or some insight, but that is how I think we go about approaching the design and development of products. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and find that. So RG Thor. So yeah, I already guys also show you that little the Pro WS based products there. So that's pretty much rounding. Oh, you know what? I didn't show it. I didn't show you guys the chair, right? Yes, I have two quick just chair updates for you guys. So let me go ahead and show that. So we have the ROG Courser. This guy is going to be pretty cool. So this is actually kind of like an internally, our kind of design guidance here was an updated version of kind of the Chariot. So the original Chariot was kind of that RGB chair that we offered. This one has actually some really cool design elements. Like it actually has a dynamic lumbar adjustment system. So as you go back, actually both things get automatically adjusted for you. It has a magnetic actually headrest design. It has this really cool integrated RGB lighting system, which looks really clean and diffused, and actually can have light patterns that are across the ghost around it. On the back, you actually even have like a little space to actually be able to put the power bank right there. 4D armrest with 360-degree access. The actual cold foam is actually what's called cold pressed, right, which allows for durability and enhancement. There's actually forming that's also present there to be able to ensure actually better resiliency and better support in there. So I think this is a really cool design to supplement also what we already have within our Ergo option, which that's another update that we have available within the actual Destrier Core. So the Destrier Core, we already launched it, but we are going to be offering an alternative within this. So this is, of course, a step down from the flagship Destrier model. So it is the core-based option. But it's still a fantastic option that if you're really looking for one that's hyper breathable, right, and you prefer kind of that more kind of I'd say office Ergo type of design, right, then that's where the Destrier really kind of shines. Outstanding build quality and construction and performance, really nice attention to details in a lot of different areas. I really love the aesthetic, and then now we're going to be offering it in a moonlight white base variant. So we had originally the black version, now we're going to have the white version, and we're going to have the Courser other option as well. So those are going to be two updates that we're going to have within the gaming chair lineup. So that pretty much rounds things out. Oh, I didn't actually get to networking, so I'm going to give you guys the last kind of just crash course here on networking, and then we'll close things out. So just a couple of quick updates on the networking side. This is actually our first 5G enabled router. So this is actually going to be the 5G B858U. It's also going to be Wi-Fi 7 with dual band support. It has also 2.5 gigabit WAN and LAN functionality. This is going to be, I think, more useful for those of you that might be in maybe areas where you have less ISP deployment options that are available to you, but you are seeing stronger cellular prevalation in terms of what's being offered by carriers. So if you can get multi-gigabit speeds in terms of 5G, but maybe your ISP servicing is being limited to sub 1 gigabits, or maybe not even getting to that 1 gig or maybe like 2.5 gig options, then 5G might be another option for you. But here, this is going to offer you the same type of great performance and feature set that we offer in our traditional routing products for traditional ISPs, but with 5G integration support. Do keep in mind that we'll still keep what we call as our USB WAN backup support. So you also have secondary ISP backup, so that if you want to take your iPhone or your Android phone, plug this in, you can also default to a backup ISP service that's provided directly from your phone. And the 4G or the 5G cellular connectivity can actually go to that router. So if you ever had a kind of a down for whatever period or purpose on that, you can also default back up to the USB WAN support. So that is going to be an update that'll be coming on that side. We also have two other models that we're going to be introducing for, I would say, our gaming focused tri-band Wi-Fi 7 based lineup. So the flagship model will be the BE19000 AI, which will be the first router that will have a dedicated NPU, that will have an ultra fast 2.6 gigahertz quad core SoC, 4 gigabytes of storage, 4 gigabytes of RAM on that unit. It's going to be ultra high performance. It has dual 10 gigabit LAN on it as well. But for users that don't maybe need necessarily the 10 gigabit LAN, but they still want tri-band Wi-Fi 7 connectivity and a lot of fast Ethernet, then this unit could be really interesting. This is going to be the GSB 18000. This unit will actually give you up to 3,300 square feet of coverage, tri-band based connectivity, and it'll have 8 2.5 gigabit LAN ports on this guy. You also support, of course, AI mesh, which means if you want to be able to stack this with either another GS 18000, or you also want to be able to take it any of our other ASUS Wi-Fi 7 routers, then you can, of course, create your own mesh ecosystem to be able to even have more expansive coverage. You can have wired and wireless backhaul support, so you have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you create your mesh networking. And this will also be the first router coming to market that will support what's called AFC. Now, AFC, it's a very complex technology to get into, but essentially there's been a FCC update that allows for essentially routers to be able to intelligently analyze the power rating usage within their RF environment. And so if it notices that it's an environment, they can increase its power amplification to even give you faster speeds and better performance. It can essentially unlock this performance based on the kind of scanning of the RF environment. Historically, in the past, this hasn't been possible because Wi-Fi has been, let's say, like a restricted kind of space. We had to respect all the other bands that were kind of going around, and that would reduce your Wi-Fi performance. But now there's some more intelligence that's going on that essentially allows us to adaptively adjust and see what's going on, and then be able to scale out your performance. And this can actually be massive. You could literally be seeing your router's performance go up by like 25, 30, 40% in terms of its throughput when it's utilizing this AFC technology. So this will be the first unit to market that will be introducing this AFC technology. And then there's all kinds of other amazing things that we do in terms of the networking stuff, like our quality of management service. We don't do paywall guarding like a lot of the other competitors out there. You know, there's a lot of other companies that, like, even parental controls, like after a month, they're going to require you to do subscriptions. All of the cost for all of our options is essentially baked in, lifetime security-based updating. There's integrated dedicated gaming ports so you can connect your devices and have them automatically optimize. A lot of really cool stuff like that. If this unit will be too expensive for you, we don't have finalized MSRP, but I would kind of probably look at this unit being in the tri-band Y class and this kind of spec. You're going to probably be looking at a similar-ish kind of price point to what we would probably be looking at our BE 96U. So you're probably going to be around, I would estimate maybe that $450 to probably $500-ish price point. So the next model will be a more even price aggressive tri-band based unit, which will be the BE 9400, this will still be, I think, a really compelling option that we're going to have, again, for people that want to step up to, again, tri-band. You want Wi-Fi 6E, you want Wi-Fi 7. I think this unit will be a really exciting unit, and it will be our most price aggressive tri-band Wi-Fi 7 based offering that still also gives you some really great performance and also wired connectivity. So this unit is going to give you 4 2.5G ports, tri-band connectivity, the dedicated gaming port, all of our rich quality of service options. You're also going to have the AI mesh support, wired or wireless based backhaul connectivity options, all baked into this unit. So we're going to kind of have like a good, better, best option for our dedicated kind of gaming routers, right? So you're going to have the BE 9400, which I think for probably like 75% of people, this is all they're really going to need. Because keep in mind, good high performance based routers can easily cover 26, 27, 2800 plus square feet, which for the vast majority of people is going to be their home environment. You don't need to go to mesh. In actuality, in a mesh could give you worse performance because you're going to use one band in a mesh configuration, which is dedicated to talk to the two nodes. Whereas in a dedicated router, you get all your bands exposed to you, so you get the maximum throughput. The main benefit of mesh is maybe the stability and the improved performance of some of those bands if you need them kind of more on what's called like last mile coverage. So specifically, I don't know, maybe like in a patio or in a garage or in a space where you notice, I'm just not getting that performance. But the good thing is here, these units all can support mesh if you do need to be able to kind of supplement the mesh-based coverage. But it'll be the BE 9400, then we go to the GSB 18,000, and then we'll go to the 19,000 AI, right? So those will kind of be the good, better, best offering. So you would kind of tier up based on which model you would want to be able to get that tri-band experience. Both, I think this model and the GS, you should probably see this as we get ready to kind of move into late Q2 going into early Q3. And I think same thing for that Q3, probably mid to late Q3 is probably going to where you're going to see the flagship model, which would be the BE 19,000, which I think most of you guys have probably seen that one, which we announced previously, which that will be kind of almost not our flagship, because our flagship is the BE 98, which is a quad band based unit. But this will be, again, the first unit that will have kind of that NPU technology, a lot of really cool stuff baked in. And I talked a bit about this model already in kind of CS, so you can go back and watch the CS live stream if that's something you think you find interesting. So that wraps out our guys' updates. We've packed in a lot. I think it's been something like a 3-hour stream. If you guys have more questions, I'll quickly look right now. If not, then of course you guys can make sure to check out our PC DIY community. It's linked in the description down below. Hopefully, as we move forward, it's been a busy year for us. We've had some team transition, so we haven't had as many streams as we normally do. Normally, we do have this stream on a weekly basis. Hopefully, as we maybe get in the start of next month, we'll try to see if I can at least maybe have it twice a month. Maybe not every week, but maybe at least try to bring it back twice a month. And for sure, if you guys want the most recent up-to-dates on anything that we're doing, make sure to join the PC DIY community there, because we've got our dedicated community manager, which does, like I said, daily or weekly updates on new product announcements, teasers, insights, guides, builds, and a lot more. And we've got a lot of really cool plans packed in for the remainder of the year in terms of what we're going to be doing on the community side. So let me go ahead and just quickly see any last questions that might have popped up there. Doesn't look like it. So Michael says, so I need to swap with my BE98 Pro. Is that NPU? Okay, yeah. So no, no reason. The BE98 Pro is an absolutely amazing unit. Also, there's evaluation. I can't tell you with certainty right now whether or not current Wi-Fi 7 units will have a retroactive update to be enable AFC support on them. This may be possible, but I would just say make sure to keep it tuned. You're already part of our community. So if we do issue an update that will allow for this, you will see that within essentially communication to us. As you know, we're very active in releasing firmware updates, and you can also check that very easily in the ASUS router app, which of course is available for iOS or for Android. But yeah, the BA98 Pro, that's the same unit I'm running right now, is an absolutely fantastic unit, and it's the only unit on the market which is dual 6 gigahertz bands. So keep in mind, these units, they're still only tri-band, right? So it's 2.45 and 6 gigahertz. You have a unit which is actually 2.45 and then dual 6 gigahertz plus the 10G, the ultra high performance chipset. The one differential is, of course, the BA19000 AI will be still the first to introduce that NPU technology. So there'll be some interesting things on how that differs between the BA98 in that regard, but I would still not tell you that you need to change your current unit. You're pretty much using the best possible Wi-Fi 7 router that's on the market right now by definitive margin. It is the fastest unit you can get. So I would see no reasons to change it in any shape or form. All right. All right. I think that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much. You guys have a fantastic Friday. If you guys are going to be off on Monday, enjoy your Monday. Stay safe, stay healthy. Have a great weekend. Thank you guys for joining the stream, and look forward to seeing you guys as part of our PC DIY community. So with that, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and best of luck with your guys' builds. Bye-bye.